Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Naruto Was Proposed by Future Hinata, Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
The war's climax is nearing its conclusion. Only Team 7, Madara, Black Zetsu, and the other white Zetsu copies are not impacted by the infinite Tsukuyomi, which traps almost the entire world. Madara has already been attacked by Black Zetsu, who is currently giving him a lot of chakra. Sasuke and Naruto attempted to seal Madara, but were thwarted by the unexpected hair that emerged from her growing body. Sasuke and Naruto exchange glances as they determine whether this will continue. Sasuke and Naruto stare in disbelief as they sense the terrifying power levels rising quickly. They see Madara grow quickly, and Black Zetsu smirks as he starts to encircle Madara. After exchanging glances and nodding, Naruto and Sasuke extend their hands and lightly touch Black Zetsu. They quickly concentrate on chakra. Sasuke, Naruto, and Black Zetsu all abruptly disappear. In the distance, Naruto can be seen clinging to a black form that seems to scream in agony and fear. On the opposite side, Sasuke is seen holding the same object, which also performs the same action. Black Zetsu yells, "What have you done, mother?" "No." Looking around, Naruto notices Madara grow larger and abruptly tremble, but the vicinity of Naruto also trembles, along with a number of other places. With a swift leap back, Naruto captures Black Zetsu and witnesses the space he was in vaporize. Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief as he realized that the place he was in didn't exist at all. He could sense nature at the time, and for a brief moment, that place didn't exist. Naruto hears a voice in his head saying, "Naruto." He looks around, recognizes the voice, and feels space collapse. He is uneasy as he watches Madara grow and combust in front of his eyes. Naruto shouts, "Move," as he watches Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi flee. Feeling a twinge in his heart, Naruto quickly disappears and resurfaces at the tree's base. As he looks around, he notices areas of the world disappear in brief bursts of light. He quickly identifies the source of the voice by scanning his eyes and noticing a number of people encircled. He also notices a stunning girl with fair skin, dark indigo hair, and eyes that display the Rinnegan sign. As the tranches entangle her, he recognizes her as Hinata. But when he notices the area surrounding her buckling, he becomes alarmed. "Naruto, help," he thinks. Hearing Hinata's voice, and seeing how terrified he is, Naruto disappears once more. He appears close to Hinata and rushes to her, his arms outstretched, intending to grab her and take her away before the area surrounding her disappears. The area surrounding Hinata flashes white, Naruto flashes yellow, and for a moment it appears as though the world does not exist there, but then the wind meets it and it comes back to life. Naruto lands close by, staring down at his arms, or at least where they should be, with wide eyes. When he looks down, he notices that everything has vanished, including the majority of his right arm and his entire left arm and shoulder. His eyes are wide as he looks back, seeing where Hinata was, or wasn't, but he felt nothing, as if they had never been there in the first place. Naruto collapses to his knees, his mind quickly shutting down as shock sweeps through his body. The world can hear Naruto roar, "Hinata!" before he collapses face down and lies there, his chakra quickly fading from his body. XXXXX because her eyes were closed, Hinata floats in the midst of nothingness, oblivious to what transpired. She remains in this position for a few seconds before opening her eyes, which are still filled with the Rinnegan's confusion and fear because she is floating aimlessly in a plane of white existence with only a few specks of dirt, rocks, and some of the wood, paper substance she was wrapped in. As she looks around, she notices more dirt and rocks that appear to have been carried away with her. "Where am I?" As Hinata searches for any indication of life but only finds more dirt and rocks, and even a kunai floating in nothingness. She feels as though an eternity is passing with every second, which makes her even more afraid. She glances over her shoulder and is relieved to see Naruto's glowing hand. She looks in horror as she turns even more and realizes that her arm has been severed. The idea that Naruto is in pain causes her to scream in shock, horror, and agony. She soon sees Naruto's left arm, along with a portion of his shoulders and rib cage, as the world around her trembles violently. The chakra cloak around it let her know it was Naruto, which made her anxious and afraid, as if she had just killed him in an attempt to save her. As she holds herself and sobs for what seems like an eternity, tears stream down her face and then float in emptiness. Soon after, she spots what appears to be a white tear in the room. It's difficult to see, but she can tell it's not natural. Her attention is drawn to something. She looks and sees a light form in a world or white light, which confuses her and leaves her wondering how she could see it. What's happening? Is Naruto doing okay? Is he still living? The war is where? This light. What is it? Will I die here? She was thinking about these things. She's not sure how she knew, but she knew when the light looked at her. In a deep, calming, echo-like voice, the light says, "Anomaly. You should not be here." With tears streaming down her cheeks, Hinata screams, Where am I? What happened to Naruto?" Every word she utters causes the world to change around her. As it begins to suction the dirt, arms, and Hinata, the light repairs the rip and says, "This is this one's universe. This one repairs worlds that damage their space and time. This one has seen objects from different worlds, but you are the first to enter this one's world. This one will put you back in your universe." Before she is sucked into the rip and sees nothing but blackness, she begins to panic, not knowing what is happening or how she got here. Naruto's severed arms were the only source of light, and they began to die as a result of the chakra's shutdown. The world erupts around them after a few seconds, causing Hinata to cover her eyes in agony and remain there for a number of seconds. After covering her eyes out of fear, Hinata feels the sun, becomes a little disoriented, and hears a voice. The voice she recognizes as her father asks, "Hinata, why are you hiding your face?" When she opens her eyes, she sees her house and the people she knows as her family. Looking around and mostly seeing people's knees, Hinata is a little perplexed. Confused once more, she looks up to see her father holding her hand. Confused yet again, she looks down to see her toes and wonders where her breasts have disappeared. Hinata asks, "What's going on?" and becomes even more perplexed when she realizes her voice is much lighter and squeakier than before. Haishi, who has been aware of this for a few weeks, tells her, with a slight smile, "It's your third birthday party." She seems a little perplexed by her inquiry about what's happening. As she looks around, Hinata raises her eyebrows and notices that everyone is smiling at her and looking young again, including her mother Livia, grandfather, guardian Ko, uncle Hizashi, and cousin Neji. As she panics and wonders what's happening, her heart rate rises and her breathing becomes rapid and shallow. What's going on? This isn't real. I should be fighting Madara, not here. Fight the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, because Naruto is in danger. I must save him. Remembering his severed arms and the fact that he was facing Madara, Hinata screams to herself, "I need to help him." Her body starts to shake, and she tries to move, but her father's hold is too tight, preventing her from escaping, leaving him perplexed. "Hinata, what's wrong?" When Haishi sees her daughter trembling and then throwing up, he and the majority of the clan become concerned. "What's wrong?" one of them inquires, fearfully observing the pool of vomit that Hinata managed to create. As his wife, Livia, approaches her, Haishi remarks, "It looks like my daughter is not feeling well right now. She is a stunning woman with dark eggplant hair, an E-cup-sized breast, and a figure that any man would find attractive. She is dressed in a bright kimono." I believe Hinata became overwhelmed by the excitement and was placed in her room. As she looks at her daughter and smiles tenderly at her, Livia tells them, she needs some rest. Her eyes are still full of love, just as they were on the day she finally met Hinata at her birth. "Okay, darling." Haishi responds as he picks up Hinata and takes her to her room. Everyone else talks, some of them worried about Hinata, but they still interact. Haishi enters his daughter's room, opens it, puts her on the bed, and tucks her in. He smiles when she sees her dazed expression, thinking that she has a slight fever, and puts her stuffed penguin next to her. "I hope you will feel better tomorrow, my daughter," Haishi says, kisses Hinata's forehead before leaving the room, looking back to see her still there with a slightly perplexed expression on her face. He plans to have someone bring her some soup later and goes to ask one of the maids to make sure she doesn't ruin her bedsheets. The orphanage matron, a shinobi nun, is watching Naruto, a 3-year-old, on the swing set in the Konoha orphanage playground. She coughs a lot, thinking she has a cold, and is currently mixing a cold remedy that a shinobi kindly gave her. She always watches over Naruto, and they were the only ones left in the orphanage because most of the children were adopted and it required fewer staff members. It wasn't even that big, just a little one. She may have been the youngest shinobi nun in the village, but she was shocked to see that most of them simply got up and left, taking most of the other orphans with them. She knows the rest would follow suit and leave Naruto Uzumaki alone, so she chose to stay behind to watch over and care for him, even sending paperwork to adopt him because she got along so well with the boy. The majority of the shinobi nuns went to another orphanage outside the village, somewhere in the Land of Fire. Even though the majority of the children were inside getting ready to leave the orphanage, She watches with excitement as Naruto goes up a slide before she sees him fall off the slide and begins to scream in excruciating pain, which makes her realize that she really needs to have this cough checked out by a medical ninja, just to be safe, since it has been there for a few weeks. Naruto. The nun shouts in shock, dropping the cup of medicine as she rushes over to Naruto. The boy soon passes out while he starts to experience a nightmare inside his mind. He is seeing various images of wars and a giant unknown 10-tailed creature, fighting a man that doesn't seem human, and the last image of him trying to save a girl, but couldn't. The matron quickly starts checking on Naruto for any sign of broken bones, but sees smoke and scarring across his right arm, some smoke coming from his left shoulder. She worries more since it looks like his arms were severed and his arms catch flames, but these flames were yellow with a hint of orange. The power coming from them soon causes her lung to clear up, stopping the pain in her lungs before they vanish, making her confused and worried. She watches as the flames disperse and she coughs, feeling her lungs clear up a large amount. She then sees Naruto swell up and look similar to a toad at one point before shrinking down and having orange eyelids before that too vanishes. The look in her eye is obviously shock, confusion, and thinking, what the fuck did she eat, or did he eat him for that matter? She shakes her head and inspects and sees something that wasn't there before. She looks and sees a light, circular mark on the palm of his right hand. She quickly picks him up and starts rushing towards the orphanage. She stops for a second, seeing the cup that she was going to drink from melting away at the ground, almost like acid, making her even more scared and realizing that someone tried to poison her, feeling glad that Naruto passed out when he did. XXX the Kyuubi, meanwhile, was dozing off inside Naruto's mindscape when he felt an odd surge of energy passing through both his prison and Naruto's mind, waking him up. What the fuck was that? He yawns and lies back down, ignoring it and falling back to sleep. The Kyuubi wonders out loud, which seems familiar to him. His figure quickly appears to grow a few dozen feet, but it doesn't notice because of its size. It looks around cautiously but doesn't recognize the unusual surge. XXXXX. It's been hours, and it's the dead of night, and Hinata is still awake because images keep popping into her head, even though she was trying to fall asleep so she could figure this out in the morning. After a few minutes, she starts to fall asleep, but then she hears footsteps coming toward her bed, which makes her shiver in fear because she doesn't recognize the chakra. She soon feels someone touch her blanket, which causes her to activate her Byakugan, and she sees the person. The kidnapper who gave her nightmares as a child, the culmination of everything she endured as a child. And she screams and lashes out in fear, using gentle fists the Kumo ambassador, kidnapper right in the genitals, feeling one of them pop, having killed one of his balls. AAARRRGGHHH, little Hinata stares at him as pictures flash through her mind, but she soon loses all emotion as the Kumo ambassador, kidnapper screams in agony and falls to the ground. KKYA. Hinata began to scream in fear and rage, wanting to do this for as long as she could remember, and using her gentle fist a few more times before she's exhausted, realizing that her chakra reserves are much lower than they were. Suddenly, a few branch member guards burst into the room after hearing the screams, and they soon spot the Kumo ambassador, kidnapper, on the floor. The group quickly seizes him as a female Hyuga tries to calm Hinata down, noticing that her Byakugan is active and surprised that she was able to activate it so quickly. Despite being born with it, it takes years to activate it. XXXXX. 2 weeks have gone by since that incident, and both Konoha and Kumo have been at each other's throats since Konoha managed to extract information from the captured Kumo ambassador, kidnapper, who was actually sent to kidnap the Hyuga heiress for the Byakugan, figuring that a child would be the easiest to capture. However, because of how he was stopped, Kumo was unable to make any demands because one of their backup plans was that if he was killed by a Hyuga, he would make demands to the body of his killer for violating the treaty. Nevertheless, since he is still alive and confessed everything because he was still in pain, he confessed everything because, for some strange reason, he was still in agony, and Kumo was blamed as well. XXX Hinata, on the other hand, is playing with her cousin Neji right now. The two of them were smiling a lot and enjoying being a child again. Hinata believes that she was sent to the wrong time by accident or that she had a terrible dream that lasted for 13 years, but she mostly adheres to the time theory, though she does occasionally have strange thoughts that shift through her mind. While playing with her cousin and eventually becoming friends, Hinata thought to herself, "I saved Uncle Hisashi's life and Neji's happiness." Despite her inability to leave the estate alone to find Naruto, her thoughts kept returning to him. XXXXX. During this time, the entity appears distressed and vibrates violently as its white world cracks wider marks. It soon drifts through unknown space and begins to crack into the time barrier that appears to be nothing more than the white void. It realizes its big mistake, sensing and witnessing the damaging effects in its world that weren't natural, and it realizes that it sent the anomaly into the wrong time. It had never sent a living being back, and all it had experienced was dirt and rocks, which is insufficient to cause harm when sent forward or backward in time. It has started attempting to enter the real world in order to correct its mistake, but the barrier is strong, and its job is to fix barriers, not to break them down. It is taking a lot of effort on its part to effectively get through the time barrier that it usually fixes, but it must do so by sending it to its correct time, having already sensed that it is causing paradoxes to occur, damaging its world rapidly. Each crack that appears in its world feels like 1,000 needles through its eardrums. Each misstep that Hinata causes its skin to peel, vibrate, and its world to act as if it were being poured with salt, lemon, and sulfuric acid. Each paradox destroys its existence and it reforms since it is all it is. To break what it is meant to repair is to destroy its life purpose, its meaning to life, and its work. A few months have gone by since the failed kidnapping incident in Cloud Village. It is now nighttime in the Hidden Leaf Village, and Hinata is cautiously making her way to the front gates of the Hyuga compound. She is very quiet, thinking no one has noticed her, and she starts to run in that direction until someone gently and lovingly grabs her from behind and lifts her up. "Why are you skulking around these days, Hinata?" Livia whispers to her daughter. "Please, just go back to bed." He gently holds Hinata and walks down the hallways when he sees a maid, who sighs a little and gives her a look that says, "Children, right?" Hinata soon finds herself in her room, growing weary because her mother's nurturing nature still makes her drowsy, grinning as she clings to her mother. Livia lowers Hinata onto her bed, tucks her in, kisses her, and smiles affectionately at her daughter. Hinata thought to herself, this is another attempt that failed. Damn it. She had been trying to escape to find Naruto for months, but her parents had kept her confined to the compound because of the Cloud kidnap attempt, even though she wasn't actually abducted, in case the Cloud Village nation sought retribution for what the Hyuga clan had done to them. Tomorrow, she will attempt to sneak out again to find Naruto, but her mother always catches her, regardless of the strategy she employs. After making sure Hinata is comfortable and tucked back in her bed, Livia puts her stuffed penguin next to her and says, "Please Hinata, stop trying to sneak out." Before leaving the room, Livia gives Hinata a sweet smile and kisses her forehead. Hinata, who has been training for the past few months and is receiving praise from her family because she was passing with flying colors in her family training, thought out loud, maybe I will find Naruto-kun tomorrow. She closes her eyes, calls a day, and falls asleep, grinning slightly as she dreams about Naruto. XXXXXXX. The various shinobi nations were still at odds with Lightning Nation, and they were all wondering what the Lightning Nation had actually taken from them during their peace treaties with them. A number of businesses and clients have left the Lightning Nation because of their violation of the peace treaty in order to gain power in this way. The Lightning Daimyo is furious with the village hidden in the clouds for even employing such a dishonest tactic, as their actions made the Daimyo appear to be a liar, and he was the one who approved the peace treaty in the first place, which makes him appear dishonest and underhanded. The other daimyo believed that he was not sincere with the peace treaties and was only using them to increase his military resources. Why in the world would he approve of kidnapping? He was actually forcing his own nation to return any of their kidnapped victims to their countries. The Raikage, now despises the Hyuga clan for causing so much trouble in his village. His entire village's reputation is so worthless that they are now known as treaty breakers. Many of the clients with whom they had treaties cancelled their contracts, which resulted in fewer missions for the village's income. It was compelled to return all of the kidnapped victims, including the research data that was supposed to be returned to the nations. The daimyo even forced him to compensate the victims for all the hardship he caused them. The fact that his village is now known as the village of thieves and scum, however, infuriated him more than ever. He is aware that all shinobi used devious methods to gain an advantage and win battles, but it appears that breaking a peace treaty by using it as a pretext to abduct a child is truly going too far. XXXXXXX. The past few months have been fantastic for Naruto. He has never felt happier while confined to the orphanage. The orphanage matron adopted him, and the orphanage was eventually closed because all of the other caregivers simply upped and left, taking the other children with them. Naruto and the orphanage matron now live in a large house with a lovely room that he can call his own. Naruto is ecstatic, finally having a mother he had been longing for. When the shinobi nun enters his room, he sees Naruto playing with his toys. "All right, Naruto-kun, are you ready to sleep?" Naruto nods his head enthusiastically, puts his toys away, and leaps into his bed as the nun asks. Sister Sayla merely smiles at Naruto, who responds, "Yes, Sister Sayla." Sayla approaches Naruto and kisses his forehead before placing a small stuffed animal of a shinobi next to him. Naruto smiles and begins to fall asleep. I told you, just call me Sayla or Mummy. As soon as Naruto entered his subconscious, he began to see flashes of death and war. He wriggled in agony and fear, seeing familiar faces of people he had never met, seeing them die and fighting a monster of unknown horrors, seeing the world fall apart, and then seeing himself running towards a beautiful woman, feeling as though her life was in danger, seeing nothing but a flash and it becoming nothing. He keeps having dreams about another life, and he doesn't know why he wakes up, but he puts on a smile when he realizes it's a dream and has been enjoying every day with his foster mother. XXXXXXX. A few more months have gone by, and now Hinata and her family are finally outside the Hyuga compound, enjoying each other's company as they make their way to the park. She may finally get to see Naruto after spending months inside the compound and last seeing him during the war, but she is still unsure if this is time travel or if she is just having a 13-year-long dream. Nevertheless, she is still choosing the time travel option because it seems to make the most sense to her. She then noticed that she and her family had finally arrived at the park after a lengthy journey, seeing both familiar and unfamiliar faces. All right, Hinata, you are free to explore this park, but Neji must accompany you. Livia smiles at her daughter and squats down to ask. Thank you, Mom. As she leaves with Neji in tow, Hinata responds, unbeknownst to Neji, I'm looking for Naruto. I came across a playground and saw kids that I know will be my classmates. I looked around for Naruto because I remember how adorable he was as a child, and he was escorted by a nun who had just entered the playground with him. After giving it a lot of thought, I don't remember ever seeing a nun in Naruto's life before. Perhaps I just had a strange dream after all, or did her influence with the cloud kidnapper cause this? As she begins to make her way to the playground, Hinata thinks to herself, this is strange, but I can finally go and see Naruto. Excited to see the other kids playing, Naruto rushes up to join them. Soon after, he sees a boy with a pineapple-shaped hairstyle playing with a fat boy and a blonde girl. For some reason, Naruto approaches the group of kids, but he recognizes them. As the three kids stop playing and give Naruto a strange, perplexed look, Ino takes out a piggy bank and says, Hey there Shikamaru, Ino. Choji, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. How do you know our names? Shikamaru asks him, being lazy. With a silly smile, Naruto says, I don't know. He then looks interested as Ino approaches him. Naruto looks bewildered as Ino tells him, pay up, my family is allowed to read minds. He fumbles in his pockets for a coin and deposits it into her piggy bank. With a smile, Ino pulls out a single piece of paper and begins writing on it. Naruto then looks at it and realizes it is just scribbles. This paper is for you, Naruto Uzumaki. With this, you will not have your mind read. The penalty is giving you this piggy bank, Ino says to him. Naruto merely responds, huh? As Hinata and Neji approach the group. When Hinata heard them, she became perplexed as well. Did Naruto know who they were? But they were strangers to one another. Hinata asks herself if Naruto acquired his memories in any way. Because Naruto lacks determination, she finds it confusing when she looks into his eyes and sees that he was genuinely happy with a hint of sadness. Is this Naruto really mine? She wonders. She knows it's him, but he doesn't seem like the person she remembers. Naruto notices that the two other kids appear to be familiar. Naruto says, hello, who are you? Hinata Hyuga introduces herself to Naruto and her future classmates, saying, my name is Hinata Hyuga, and this is my cousin, Neji Hyuga. With a puzzled expression on the faces of all the kids, including Hinata, Naruto says, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, do you want to see a cool trick I can do? Choji responds, sure, as Naruto extends his right hand. Although Hinata thought it looked like a sun, they all notice a bright, round mark on the palm of his hand. After that, he begins concreting and soon after, a chakra orb appears in his hand that rapidly rotates in several directions. They all appear amazed and in awe, but the chakra orb quickly begins to act strangely. Just before the chakra orb explodes, all of the other kids begin to quickly retreat from Naruto as a result. Sayla begins to approach the group while pulling out a first aid kit she had after Naruto is knocked back to the ground with a dazed expression on his face. Sayla begins dressing her adopted son, saying, oh Naruto, you did it again. Hinata asks, who are you? While Sayla merely gives her a smile. Sayla responds, my name is Sayla, I'm Naruto's mother. Ino's expression is bewildered. But you dress up like a shinobi nun, and I was told that nuns can't get married? Ino is perplexed. As she resumes bandaging Naruto until he resembles a miniature mummy, Sayla responds, "Oh, I'm not part of that organization anymore, and I adopted little Naruto here." I can't recall anyone named Sayla from Naruto-kun's life. Hinata wondered in her mind whether she was truly in a different dimension now or whether her influence was the reason Naruto was happy in some crazy way. The only other thing that comes to mind is that Naruto was thrown back, but only his arms managed to get through her. Hinata begins to consider the possibility that Naruto may have inherited his memories but was so unaware of it that he had an impact on his own life. Because Hinata's brain was small and her mind was 16 years old, she sighs in frustration as her head starts to hurt. Naruto looks at them and smirks as he stands up. Naruto smirks and tells them, "I'll probably need to not do anything too extreme." The group plays together, and Hinata is glad that Neji and Naruto have been enjoying themselves since their first encounters. If you had a knife, the two would have reached for it to relieve tension. When Hinata finally sees Naruto, she gets butterflies in her stomach because she remembers all the times she wanted to be with him but passed out. She can now indulge her inner child and spend as much time as she wants playing with Naruto. The kids started leaving for home as it was getting late. This made Hinata unhappy and made her want to spend more time with him. With his classic smile, Naruto says, "I had a lot of fun, Hinata." Hinata returns the smile, sensing that his joy is genuine. She starts to speak, but is taken aback when he gives her a hug before he leaves, waving at her. Hinata's face flushes and her lower body trembles as she opens her mouth. She does something she hasn't done in a year, but technically it's the first time, as images flash through her mind. She faints, and shortly after, Neji panics while Livia, who is also shocked and worried about her daughter's health, wanders over. XXXXXXX. After a few more months, Naruto is sitting at a table, giddy over a huge birthday cake that literally bears his name. Sayla puts a big knot of it in a box. After 3 years of nothing, Naruto has never felt so fortunate as he celebrates his birthday with his mother. As far as he can recall, he even dreamed about being alone for almost 19 years. This year, however, has been the best. He has a mother, made friends, and feels like he fits in. He even feels a connection to the Hyuga heiress. She makes him smile, though he's not sure why. Sayla smiles and plants a kiss on Naruto's forehead, saying, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Naruto, happy birthday to you." Showing him the 4 candles, Sayla says, "Now make a wish." Naruto smirks and blows hard, extinguishing the flames. Naruto smiles and kicks his legs from under the table, saying, "I'm so happy." As Naruto opens his birthday present, Sayla smiles and pulls out some ice cream, saying, "I'm glad. Now, let's eat some cake with ice cream." He becomes perplexed upon seeing a piece of paper, a wooden kunai, and an orange shirt. Naruto asks, glancing at the paper and only recognizing a few words, "What's this?" She tells Naruto, it's a form of acceptance to the Ninja Academy. Naruto immediately erupts in excitement and begins to jump around like a bouncy ball. "I'm going to the Ninja Academy," exclaims Naruto. XXXXXX. After a year, despite their initial skepticism, Hinata was able to convince her parents to allow her to attend the Ninja Academy. They did give her permission, but they also made Neji go. He was a year older than she was, so he would be in a different class, but at least he could act as her guardian in case something went wrong. Hinata went to school, glad to be in Naruto's class, but she was disappointed to be paired with primarily female students. Nonetheless, she spent the majority of her time with Naruto, content that he genuinely desired to spend time with her. Even so, she found it challenging to complete her regular training and academy lessons with her father and cousin. She was grateful that she still had the knowledge and chakra control she had before, even though her body and chakra weren't what they were. She did her best to keep up, feeling stronger and able to see a pride in her father's eyes that she had never seen before, or failed to see before. She was self-assured and shocked when Naruto said, "Never gives up." She somehow taught him her ninja technique, which she found ironic. Although she was embarrassed that she was teaching him on his own, she did observe that Naruto always had a perplexed and shocked expression on his face when she explained things to him, as if he had heard them before. Naruto had heard it all before, but he was unable to identify it because it sounded like a nightmare or faraway memory. He simply declared Hinata to be his best friend because he felt a strong bond with her, and he punched Kiba for making fun of Naruto for having a girlfriend. Hinata was pleased that he was interested in her, but she continued to flush at his arrogant assertions and pointing her out. XXXXX. A little while later, Hinata is grinning as she celebrates her 5th birthday with her parents. As they chat and wait for their food to be finished, she waves to Neji and his father, who waves back with a smile. Livia taps a small object against glass, drawing everyone's attention, and Heishi smiles. In an attempt to pique Hinata's interest, Livia tells everyone, I have a wonderful announcement and a little more of a celebration with Hinata, as a special little gift. However, she keeps in mind what happened the last time. After receiving a few applause and congratulations, she informs them, we have been informed that I'm pregnant. Livia then crouches beside Hinata and smiles at her. She asks her daughter, are you looking forward to having a little brother or sister? Hinata responds with a smile but is anxious because she recalls that it was a competition against her younger sister. But now that she is more skilled than she was previously, she wishes to be closer to her younger sister, just as she is with Neji, and she smiles, telling her, I'm looking forward to having a little sister. Livia looks bewildered. With a slight smile, Livia asks, how do you know it's a sister? We don't even know. Hinata smiles and her eyes enlarge. With a smile, Hinata tells her, I'm hoping for a sister, before frantically rubbing her fingers together. As Hinata begins to reflect, she recalls that her mother died due to a problem that arose during Hanabi's birth. The medical ninja had failed to notice some internal bleeding that transpired during the birth and died a month later as a result. Hinata promises to ensure she doesn't lose her mother again, telling herself, I won't let her die this time. I'll make sure she is tended to and will be with us. XXXXX. For some strange reason, there appears to be no animal life in a particular area several hundred miles away in the darkest forest in the Shinobi realms. It appears as though something is shattering time and space as the world and surrounding space change and warp. This has been going on for a few weeks, but all it seems to accomplish is create the impression that it is an abnormal occurrence, which causes all animals to run for cover. To fix its error, the entity tears into Hinata's universe through a huge crack that lets light shine through. Hinata is in the room with her immediate family on March 27th. They wait patiently for the nurses and doctors to assist with the baby's delivery. With the cutest face she was wearing, Hinata carried out her plan to save her mother by repeatedly asking the doctor to check on her. The physician gave in and assured her that he would visit her mother following the birth of the child. After a considerable amount of time, a man wearing a white coat emerges. With a smile, the mother holds a blanket-wrapped object and says, well, the baby is safely delivered. Congratulations. Heishi smiles back. He exclaims, it's a bouncing baby girl, and drops the wrapped bundle to the ground, frightening the family. However, when the bundle bounces and the doctor catches it, they look bewildered. A few seconds later, a doctor signs as he rounds the corner. Ignoring the Hyuga's glares, he says in the calmest voice possible, come on Mr. Suime, back to the psyche ward. He takes the man's arm and begins to walk with him before disappearing from view. A doctor leaves wearing a shy smile and a little blood on his sleeve. Though he did observe a glare for them from the Hyugas, he tells them, sorry, I have no idea how he managed to sneak into the room. He's a psychiatric patient that got his hands on a basketball. He approaches Heishi and says, but anyway, Lady Livia has delivered her baby, and she is a healthy baby girl. His voice fades, but Hinata can still hear it. With a worried but appreciative nod from Heishi, the doctor informs him, I managed to catch a blood clot that was forming inside of your wife's womb. If I wasn't checking as a precaution, it would have gone unnoticed and it may have worsened within a month. However, we managed to treat it before it did any damage. You can go see them both now. Heishi gently takes his daughter's hand, a slight surprise to her, and gestures for the Hyuga family to follow. After a short stroll, they enter the room and see Livia clutching a small infant girl. Livia says, hello everyone. Meet the newest addition to the family, Hanabi Hyuga. She smiles tearfully, grateful that the doctor found and removed the blood clot from her body because she might not have been able to attend her baby girl's first birthday otherwise. Since they are the ones she loves and who give her life purpose, she can now spend a lot more time with her family and doesn't want to part from them for any reason. Knowing that everything will be okay now, Hinata is looking at her mother and baby sister and hopes that Hanabi will be kinder and receive the maternal love she was never given as a child. XXXXX. In the meantime, their predicament has gotten worse within the hidden cloud village. It happened when Reikage freed the abducted people, who were all young and female. Since it seemed so suspicious, many of the female shinobi and villagers demanded an explanation for why all of the abduction victims were female. The vast majority of female figures who were influential enough to draw an audience were given an explanation of the entire situation. He shares his opinion with them in the hopes that they will comprehend. The female kunoichi and the villagers were furious and soon threw rotten food at him. Since that's what the other village would have done, it told them his plan was to put the female victims in a breeding factory. I didn't realize, though, that most of the villages would even do that if they were rational, since, first of all, someone would simply kill themselves in those conditions, and second, it isn't morally acceptable. Because he genuinely believed that they would find that plan acceptable, most of the women in the hidden cloud left the village after learning of it, believing it to be a sexist jerk and a pervert. Since his assistant and the Jinchuriki of the Two Tails also left the village, he has been and continues to be perplexed by the entire situation and a little concerned. XXXXX Meanwhile, a tiny fissure in the time and space barrier is developing in the shadowy, deep forest of the shinobi world. It is a different dimension, though, and the inhabitants of that dimension simply went about their daily lives without realizing the harm that was occurring in their time and space. But in these worlds life continues. There are footsteps in the vicinity, and a tiny figure emerges from the darkness with a slight limp and several bandages wrapped around her left arm. She appears to be wearing nothing but a ripped, oversized red t-shirt. On her right hand, she has markings that appear to be tattoos of the number 31. Her hair is raven black, short, and untidy. She doesn't really walk with purpose. She walks weakly. As she looks ahead, she coughs a little, feeling the strength leave her. A tear slides down her cheek as she sees the light coming from the cracks. She whispers, I don't want to go to heaven, because she thinks the light is the path to paradise. After a minute, she quickly realizes that this isn't the path to paradise. She examines it closely, feeling a little uneasy about it, but she keeps moving forward. With a slight cough and a renewed sense of dread of the unknown, she continues to walk. As she reflects, she recalls that the location from which she had come was a research center in the Cloud Village. She shakes her head, perplexed as to why, after a few years of experiments and darkness, they let her go. However, since her home is no longer there, she has nowhere to call home and has continued to talk and eat what she could. She shivers a little and moves farther into the woods, ignoring the pain in her feet. She is in the Fire Nation, but she is unsure. XXXXXXX For a year, Naruto has been content with his life, despite the fact that he has bags under his eyes and nightmares every night. However, Naruto has been content, making friends, and living a life that is getting better every day while putting in a lot of training. However, Naruto has observed that the sun mark on his right hand appears to behave strangely. He simply knew it, even though he couldn't put his finger on it. Naruto's 6th birthday was approaching, and he had asked his best friend Hinata to stay over. Sayla visited the Hyuga compound despite being a little taken aback. She surprised Heishi and Livia by making the request when they met, even though Heishi was being extremely cautious because he was one of the few people who actually knew who Naruto was. He was about to ask for something when Livia smiles and touches his hand, causing him to sigh. He narrows his eyes suspiciously and says, "Very well, though I plan on retrieving her before dinner the night after. I trust you're capable of watching over the two, especially my daughter?" Sayla gives him an innocent smile, but Heishi finds it offensive because it makes him think of Livia when she knows something he doesn't. Heishi raises an eyebrow when she tells him, "I'm a former matron nun. I'm trained in medical ninjutsu. I looked after dozens of children simultaneously and without incident. So I'm sure I can take care of your daughter, and if any danger were to befall her, I will show why I was matron." Heishi relaxes as he nods and hears Livia giggle a little. After Sayla writes down her address and places it on the table for him to take at any time, Heishi tells her, "Very well. I shall have my daughter sleep over at your house." She smiles and bows before leaving, saying, "Fantastic, I shall see you then, or at the academy." Unsure of what to think, Heishi waits there and glances at his wife. Worried, Heishi asks, "Did I do the right thing?" Knowing that Heishi is now becoming suspicious, Livia gets up and goes to check on Hanabi. "Well, Hinata has been fascinated in him. And she's taking her naps. I hear her saying the boy's name." Livia laughs. XXXXXXX As Hinata is being dropped off by her mother, Naruto is grinning with excitement on his birthday. The fact that Hinata's mother is so angelic, with a warm demeanor and a constant smile, never ceases to amaze Naruto. Hinata smiles and blushes slightly before bowing to Sayla, who appears amused and returns the bow. Sayla extends her hand to Hinata and says, "Welcome to my home, so treat it as yours." The girl accepts the hand and enters. Hinata wanders over to Naruto, who is sitting at the base of the stairs, grinning broadly and holding her penguin to her chest. She sighs inwardly when she realizes she has her penguin again because she has developed the habit of doing so. Naruto laughs a little and smiles while prodding her plush penguin. Sayla agrees to be picked up the following day after concluding her talk with Livia. Hinata waves timidly back when Livia calls out to her and tells her to behave. So this is Naruto's home, Hinata tells herself, surveying the lovely home that was constructed close to the village's edge. She can see the walls, and this is the furthest she has ever been from her home in her life. She continues to be perplexed and questions why Naruto is here rather than in his former apartment complex. Holding Hinata's hand, Naruto guides her to his room so she can set her belongings down. When Hinata enters it, she blushes a little and smiles a little because she notices that it's a little messy, but cleaner than Naruto's previous home. She glances around and notices a sleeping cap for a dog next to a photo of Sayla and him eating together, as if they were dining out because the photo shows a bowl of ramen. Hinata is somewhat surprised to discover that there are a few scars on the wall because she senses chakra in them. Curiosity prompts Hinata to subtly activate her Byakugan, but she is soon taken aback when she discovers remnants of the Kyuubi's chakra in the walls and the wooden foundation. Parts of the floor appear to have come to life at one point because branches appeared from it. While Naruto searches his drawers for something, she turns it off and arranges her belongings close to the entrance. She is perplexed when she witnesses him moving his arms quickly and a tiny puff of smoke emerging from the drawer. With a ninja stance, Naruto smirks and takes out a penguin. When Hinata recalls a toy used by academy students to practice the transformation jutsu, the ninja doll, she laughs a little but also gets a little confused. Hinata smiles shyly and says, That's cute." Smiling, Naruto responds, "Yeah." The two enjoyed playing games together, and Naruto even demonstrated some of his skills. He attempted the sphere once more, but Hinata told him not to, which caused him to laugh shyly. Naruto demonstrated to her how he could rip paper with just his palms and walk on walls. Even though Naruto hasn't been able to perform these skills for years, Hinata did appear shocked and impressed. She looks at him intently and notices his own bewilderment as he smiles and asks, "Naruto, how do you know these skills?" Rubbing the back of his head, Naruto tells her, "I don't know, I just know." Even though Hinata has seen the mark on Naruto's palm multiple times, he no longer possesses it from his previous life. Hinata points to her hand and asks, What about the M mark on your hand?" Naruto examines it, smiles, and shrugs. She is confused when Naruto tells her, "Don't know, I had it for a long time. Mum said it appeared when I had my accident." With a nod, Naruto removes his shirt to reveal it to her. Sayla shouts up the stairs, "Naruto! Hinata! Dinner's ready!" Naruto gets excited and pulls down his shirt, grabbing Hinata's red hand as he swiftly leads her away. He doesn't realize that Hinata was shocked to no end that Naruto was going to take off his shirt for her. When they got downstairs, Sayla was preparing ramen, Naruto's favorite food. Looking, she notices what appears to be a red statue of Hinata, and her eyebrows furrow. After giving her a brief glance, Sayla leaves for the restroom and comes back carrying a tiny bundle. Holding it beneath Hinata's nose, she brings the young girl back to reality while still blushing. Sayla smiles and says, "There we are." Hinata blushes once more as she turns to face Sayla. She then turns to see Naruto seated at the table, drooling slightly over the food in front of him. Recalling Naruto's lack of awareness of most things, particularly food, she couldn't help but laugh a little. XXXXX Hinata was aware of Naruto's eating habits from his previous life, as he repeatedly sneered down his food. After they continued to play, Hinata remembered Naruto wearing the green goggles from his previous life and gave them to him as a gift because she thought he would like them. Naruto enjoyed it, but because he had seen them before, he felt a little uneasy. Before it grew late and they fell asleep on his bedroom floor, the two kept playing. Before they went to sleep, they spent an hour discussing their family and their future goals. After seeing Naruto nod off, Hinata smiles and blushes. As he lies there, Naruto's eyes are twitching quickly, he is obviously perspiring, and parts of his body are swollen. XXX Kanai couldn't penetrate the tension that surrounds Naruto as he stands in the center of a crater. The metallic remnants of what might have been a human are in front of his feet. He sees 5 figures with orange hair in the distance as he looks ahead. Though he is unsure of the cause, Naruto feels uneasy as his senses are picking up on a lot of deaths and missing signatures of people he knows. 3 of the orange-haired figures charge at Naruto as he feels his feet move and keeps going forward. It all seemed to be a blur, so Naruto was unable to discern the movements. Though he is aware that they have all perished, he can still see the orange-haired figures falling and continues to feel them as they rise and fall. As the orange-haired figure stands in front of Naruto, his vision becomes blurry and he experiences excruciating pain throughout his body. Despite the shafts impaling his body, Naruto feels pain, horror, and the knowledge that death is his only option. Prior to his vision, Naruto sees what appears to be a stunning woman who is glowing in lavender and blue, almost like an angel. When she battles the orange figure, it appears as though a god is battling one of his angels. When Naruto witnesses the angel fall from the god, his eyes widen, and he quickly becomes enraged. XXX as his body burns and the room trembles from the vibrations he's releasing, Naruto screams in agony and shock. Something touches Naruto. It feels like silk entwined with burning acid. With his eyes closed and his skin feeling like pins and needles, he lies there as the anger subsides. There are multiple new scars throughout Naruto's room. Hinata is lying by her bed, trembling, shocked, and her eyes wide as she witnesses Naruto partially consuming the Kyuubi's chakra. Sayla hurried into the room and hurriedly put her hands on Naruto along with a paper tag. When she had adopted the third Hokage, he had given her the sealing tags and the knowledge. She trained to ensure Naruto wouldn't break the seal because she was well aware that Naruto was the Jinchuriki. Once every blue moon, it occurred unexpectedly early this month, and the Hokage made sure her home had chakra nullifiers so that no one would be alarmed by its detection. Naruto's nightmares are concerning because the Hokage and Sayla both loved him and were aware of how the Nine Tails responds to emotions. When Sayla sees Naruto unconscious, she relaxes. She feels a little uneasy after seeing the anxious Hinata, fearing that Naruto has just frightened his best friend. Sayla asks, "Are you alright?" after closely inspecting herself to make sure she wasn't hurt and letting out a sigh of relief. Knowing that Naruto is holding the Nine Tails, Hinata nods. She was simply taken aback by his abrupt action. Hinata asks anxiously, "Is Naruto alright?" Sayla grinned a little when she saw the worry and realized how much she cared for him. "Yes, he has horrible nightmares which make his chakra go out of control." Sayla replies, "It usually happens once in a blue moon. But this is an unusual surprise, which is why I thought everything will be okay." Naruto flinches, but Hinata nods and crawls over to hold his hand. He is still unconscious. Hinata merely responds, "Okay," as she lightly strokes his skin. What does he dream? Sayla sadly shakes her head and shrugs. She just tells her and sits next to her, "I don't know, he doesn't tell me." Sayla smiles slightly and asks, "Do you want to sleep somewhere else?" in an attempt to ensure Hinata's safety. "No," Hinata responds, holding onto his hand. In a whisper, Hinata says, "I'll be fine." Sayla nods, a little taken aback but relieved that Hinata isn't afraid of him, or at least has the courage to remain. Before leaving, Sayla checks Naruto again and says, "Okay, I'll be in the next room if you need me." After sitting there for a while, exhausted, Hinata lies down beside Naruto and holds him in her tiny arms before closing her eyes. She prays for pleasant dreams and that Naruto is doing well. XXXXX Hinata smiles as she slowly awakens and grasps what she thinks is her penguin, something soft and squidgy. She observes that she is also being hugged and that it is unusually warm. She opens her eyes, which quickly enlarge when she sees Naruto's face just inches away, snoring slightly and holding her in a teddy bear-like manner. Hinata quickly looks at his face and notices that he looks just as beautiful as he did yesterday. She tries to breathe easily, but it's difficult because she feels like fainting. She somehow rolls away and puts her penguin in her proper place, knowing that she would faint if she didn't escape Naruto's hold quickly. She sits close by and breathes heavily, attempting to get blood elsewhere in her body besides her face. She smiles at him, glad that he is sleeping well now, but she was a little concerned because he had bags under his eyes and she wondered if he was having trouble sleeping. Nevertheless, it became evident why he appeared so worn out and might lack confidence after learning from Sayla that he experiences nightmares. When she sees Naruto's blue eyes open and turn to face her, she raises her eyebrows and smiles. "Good morning, Naruto," she murmurs, and he smirks back before becoming perplexed that he was holding Hinata's penguin. XXXXXXX Hinata did ask Naruto what he had dreamed about, but he keeps it a secret from her and no one else, which worried her. As his best friend, she remained by his side in the hopes that it would at least be beneficial. She is now 10 years old and has been reliving her academy life for the past 4 years. While it was exciting, it was a little dull. But this time, she has been achieving the highest kunoichi ranking and has avoided her father labeling her a failure. Although she is not complaining, she did find it strange that he is not the father she remembers. Hinata was even more taken aback by how her younger sister's demeanor had changed from what she remembered. Hanabi now seemed more innocent and upbeat rather than solemn and self-reliant. She is aware that their mother's survival is the reason for Hanabi's complete personality transformation, but the extent of that transformation was unexpected. As she was in class, during the lessons she was already familiar with, Hinata kept thinking about all these abrupt changes. Given that the pink-haired girl was ranked lower than her, she is happy that she was able to maintain Sakura's Kunoichi of the Year title for 5 years. As Hinata is shocked to learn that Naruto actually placed second to the top shinobi, Sasuke Uchiha, she says to herself, I can't believe Naruto-kun is actually getting a higher ranking than he ever did. I'm so proud of him. She was never able to determine what led to the Uchiha massacre, but she was never able to determine what made Sasuke behave in that manner. Even though she traveled back in time, she still thinks and remembers Sasuke from his academy days, when hardly anyone ever discussed it and he still refuses to talk about it. Soon after joining the academy, Hinata recalls the previous few years. How many times did I wet the bed by accident? Even though she is still in a child's body, Hinata wonders to herself that this only happens when she has obscene dreams about Naruto from her previous timeline. They kept coming, and because she is still young, she is unable to control some of her bodily functions, which led to her wetting the bed. What is Naruto doing at the moment? Remembering that it will be Naruto's 10th birthday, Hinata asks out loud as she watches him distribute invitations to the entire class before Naruto approaches her. Naruto smiles broadly and says, Hey Hinata, you're invited to come to my birthday party. I really hope you come. This makes Hinata smile as well. Hinata has been concerned about him for the past 4 years because he has never told her about his nightmares, but she doesn't know what they are because his eyes are black from not sleeping. Over the years at the academy, Hinata has grown stronger, happier, and more self-assured than she was in her previous life. She was roughly 3 times more powerful than she was at the time, if Hinata had to guess. Even though Naruto, her best friend, seemed to enjoy it, she was still anxious around him. Hinata asks him, Sure Naruto, so how's your mother doing anyway? Sayla continues to dress like a shinobi nun, which causes many people to be perplexed when they speak to her. Naruto responds, She's doing alright, but a lot of people still keep confusing her for a still active nun, due to her odd dressing habit. Hinata recalls Sayla, Naruto's adoptive mother, requesting that her parents investigate a matter for her. Her parents kept what they were doing for Sayla to themselves, and she had no idea what it was. One aspect of the time travel experience that Hinata is happy about, though, is that she was able to preserve her family's happiness and, in some bizarre detour, she also provided Naruto with a better life. XXXXXXX. After a few days, almost every member of the academy is at Naruto's house, enjoying themselves. Some are playing games, while others are eating. I'll let you guess who it is. Kiba was forced to eat something repulsive. Brussels sprouts topped with horseradish and chili sauce, after losing to Naruto in their arm wrestling match. While Naruto enjoyed his party, Kiba spent 30 minutes in the restroom. Hinata approaches Naruto with trepidation. She still stutters when she says his name, Naruto-kun. But it's not as bad as it used to be. Now she stutters only occasionally. Naruto smiles and turns to face her. Naruto exclaims, Hey, Hinata, and embraces her tightly. Hinata blushes slightly as Naruto says, I'm glad you could come. With a slight smile, Hinata tells him, I wouldn't miss it for the W world. Hinata asks him, Can we go somewhere? Private? And he nods as they enter his room after walking through the house together. With his trademark grin, Naruto asks her, So, what's up? Hinata nervously asks him, I've got something for you. Could you close your eyes? Smiling, Naruto followed Hinata's instructions and closed his eyes, half expecting to be tricked, but this is Hinata, and she didn't, so perhaps it was a gift she hadn't wrapped. He opens his eyes when he feels something press against his lips and sees Hinata doing the same, feeling both pleasant and repulsive. He is not sure how to react. What's happening? She's kissing me, but why? Naruto asks himself this question. Hinata recoils and blushes deeply before departing, both of them utterly shocked that she did so. Before someone noticed that he was absent from his own party, Naruto stood there for an hour, rubbing the back of his neck in confusion and shock at what had just transpired. Hinata stayed away from Naruto for a while, but she did stay at the party for a short while. A few celebrations have been held since then as the months have gone by. It has become customary for Naruto and Hinata to share a kiss during these festivities. The two have been training hard together or finding reasons to spend time together, and they have been enjoying each other's company more than usual. Every kiss Hinata shared with Naruto was better than the last, and she was feeling thankful for this second life. XXXXX. As Hiruzen peruses the ASTEMI exam papers in the Hokage's tower, he raises an eyebrow at the test results. He occasionally went to read the reports himself, but for the most part he had left it to the Ministry of Education. He finds some of the students' skill levels to be very impressive and intriguing. He continues to read until the door is knocked on. A small group of elders and seniors soon follow his call to enter. I'm glad you have come to this meeting. With a hint of annoyance, Kaharu responds, well, you did say it was important. With a small laugh, Hiruzen turns to face the Chunin present in the room, noticing Iruka and Mizuki. Telling them, Hiruzen leans forward and separates 3 files. I have examined the exam results and I am pleasantly surprised about them. I am going to recommend these children to the pre-Genin exams. They all gaze, and some of them nod in agreement, but they also appear somewhat alarmed. Concernedly, one of them asks, you wish for Naruto Uzumaki to be part of the exam? Hiruzen gives him a serious look and nods. Yes, he has shown formidable skills, he's even shown greater strength than some Chunin that have passed. Hinata Hyuga has passed milestones in the Hyuga clan and has achieved advanced sessions that are usually associated with Chunins in their clan. And Sasuke Uchiha has shown great promise, despite the trauma he had suffered from when he was a child. Both Iruka and Mizuki nod, with the latter appearing a little uneasy. Iruka looks at the files and tells him, well, they have shown great promise. Iruka nods in agreement and tells him, they sure outstretch all genin I've taught. So if they pass, I assume they'll be placed together in a squad? Hiruzen nods and peruses a small list close by, still debating who should lead the team. Yes, I am going to put up a test for these 3. I am just informing you of this decision and prepare for the exam. A few give an unsure nod and depart to get ready. Gazing at the 3 pupils, Mizuki asks, an early graduation, that hasn't been done since Itachi, right? Hiruzen nods and briefly displays a dejected expression. Yes. Mizuki asks, you sure you wish to risk graduating early? Which causes Hiruzen to turn to face him. With a knowing nod, Mizuki states, there have been signs of physiological problems to those that are exposed to life-threatening situations. That's what I think started Itachi's path. With a small laugh, Iruka tells his companion, well, I haven't seen such finer students. Things are different now, they're older and I have complete faith in them. You worry too much. Mizuki sighs and grinds his teeth a little while grinning. After placing his hand on Iruka's shoulder, he remarks, maybe you're right. Hiruzen smiles slightly as the 2 head off to study for the tests, hoping Kushina and Minato will finally get to see their son. He sighs and looks over the list, trying to decide who would be the best. Then, with a smirk, he takes out a little orange book and opens it, skimming through it. XXXXX Hinata asked to train with Naruto while they were in the Hyuga complex, and Naruto smiled as they did so. Heishi was a little perplexed as to why, but Hinata claimed that if her opponents only used gentle fist against her, she would never learn how to defend herself. Hinata is pleased that Naruto agreed to train with her. She has accomplished things that she never imagined she could at this age. She put in a lot of training, and her cousin's training was a little startling and concerning. Neji did demonstrate some skill, but his current level of proficiency is far lower than it was at this age. Since most people are complimenting Hinata more and Hanabi is content to be there and strives to be like her sister, Hanabi was also on a lower level than before, though not by much. Hinata did consider what might occur in the future and what dangers might arise if her cousin hadn't been where he was. Hinata thinks that in order for Neji to reach his potential, she will need to push him. She mentally notes that she and Naruto should train with him. She knew she needed to train him to be at least as good as he should be, but she was afraid because she was never on his level. Hinata and Naruto both notice movement out of the corner of their eyes, and they quickly spot the 3rd Hokage and Heishi Hyuga. The pair pauses and promptly groom themselves. Their eyes are on the 2, so they know they're coming their way, so they hasten over to wait. Heishi smiles at the 2 and says, Hinata, Naruto. Hinata feels a little uneasy because the Hokage is also present. You have some intriguing news from the Hokage. As he smiles and puffs on his pipe, the Hokage says, I have noticed your progress, and I am allowing you 2 to take the Genin exams. The 2 gaze at him, waiting. Genin? At this age? I don't know what'll happen. Hinata asks herself, realizing that if she does make Genin, then she has at least 2 years of unknown and unpredictable events happening. BBW were still so young. Hinata's eyes widen and he begins cheering, happy and excited that he's going to take the Genin exams. He then grabs Hinata's hands and begins dancing in circles. Heishi and the Hokage were taken aback. After years of projecting confidence, she is now genuinely anxious. Yes, you 2 have demonstrated promising abilities. We grant early graduations to those who have achieved so much for so young. But don't worry, you'll be assigned to a squad and given safe assignments. The Hokage tells her, still observing Hinata's anxious demeanor. Heishi smiles at his daughter's smile, but he is still a little protective of her. The test is tomorrow. Heishi tells them, causing them to pause in surprise. Hinata nods, still nervous, surprised, but mostly nervous. Oh okay. Hinata smiles as she soon realizes she's dancing with Naruto, who is unaware of anything but the fact he's going to take the genin exams. Alright. I'll go home and get ready, Naruto says with a smile and a thumbs up to the two older men. With adrenaline pumping through him, Naruto yells and dashes off, leaping over the walls of the Hyuga compound. Heishi observes Hinata laughing and remarks, I don't think he knows where the test will be. The Hokage laughs too and clears his pipe before saying, I'll go around his place and tell Sayla. I better be off, lot of paperwork to get through, he says. The Hokage gave Hinata and Heishi a bow before he left with another Hyuga as his escort. I am proud of you Hinata, Heishi says, causing Hinata to look surprised. You've proved that the Hyuga clan is still strong and capable. Heishi puts his hand on her head and she looks up, blushing at his praise. She nods and looks down, feeling shy, and her father laughs. He lets go of her head and begins to fulfill other Hyuga clan responsibilities. With a smile, Hinata retires to her room to rest, thinking about what might happen. She has been going by memory here, but now that things have changed and she will be going on missions 2 years before she actually did, she swallows and tries to relax, thinking that she and Naruto will be prepared for whatever comes. She has trained for 7 years, so that will be sufficient for the time being. She enters her room, sits on her bed, breathes calmly as she begins to meditate, and tries to come up with a safe plan for the future. XXXXXXX the following day, Naruto and Hinata had already completed the majority of the exam while Iruka, Mizuki, and Hiruzen watched each of the suggested candidates. By the time the last student entered, Naruto had already demonstrated a few of his recommended jutsu to particular examiners. Right, says Mizuki, who then glances at the papers. Perform the clone jutsu. Mizuki tells him, causing Naruto to perspire as the three watch him. As he tries to focus on creating the clone jutsu, Naruto closes his eyes and makes a hand sign. His chakra pumps as something triggers a subconscious connection. See Shadow Clone Jutsu. The three jump in surprise as the smoke clears and Naruto's multiple shadow clones enter the room as he yells, causing multiple smoke explosions. When Hiruzen heard Naruto's jutsu, Iruka and Mizuki were stunned and his eyes narrowed. He wondered where Naruto had learned it and how he was able to summon so many at such a young age. Where did you learn that jutsu? He asks, closely observing Naruto. Looking at them, Naruto shrugs and smiles, saying, I don't know. He doesn't explain how he knows. Hiruzen smiles and remarks, very interesting, well done. That was the last test, all that's left is extra credit, he says, although he still has some doubts about how Naruto obtained or even found such a jutsu. What are your jutsu knowledge? After a few moments of contemplation, Naruto extends his hand and begins to move it over his own. The three watch and their eyes widen as a spiraling ball forms, and Naruto grasps it while his arm shakes before hurriedly approaching a wall, pulling back his hand, and slamming the ball into it. The wall cracks and crumbles, several deep scars spiraling from the impact, and a portion of the wall dissolves. While the two Chunin gaze in disbelief, Hiruzen is more intrigued by how Naruto accomplished his father's jutsu, even if it is only a partial one. Naruto takes a step back, looks at it, shakes his head, backs up, and looks at the examiners. He ponders further, shrugs his shoulders, and starts to walk back to the wall and climb it, leaving them all perplexed but nodding. Anything else? Impressed by Naruto's abilities, Iruka inquires. As he leaves the wall and approaches them, Naruto smiles and shrugs, asking, Did I pass? As he stands in front of them, Naruto asks with a smile. Iruka and Mizuki exchange glances, and both of them nod. Mizuki perspires a little in response, and the Hokage smiles before giving him a headband. Naruto then bursts into a big smile and begins to dance with joy. You and 2 others have passed, Hiruzen smiles and says, Well done, Naruto. We'll arrange everything that matters when we meet in my office tomorrow. Hiruzen laughs and gets to his feet, saying, This was interesting. Naruto gives him the thumbs up before removing his headband and dancing his way out of the room. We appreciate your time, and you are welcome to come back to the academy to complete your lessons. Mizuki thought, how did Naruto do all that? Even the nun didn't know half of the techniques. He shook his head and continued to follow Iruka, lost in thought. Iruka and Mizuki nod, get up, and leave with the Hokage before parting ways. XXXXX Sayla was so proud of Naruto that she even bought him new ninja equipment and tools. Naruto was having a great time at home, enjoying his meal and thinking about how he graduated before most of his classmates. He smirked inwardly as he ate his large bowl of ramen, wanting to get as strong as Hinata and showing off his shid to Sasuke. He was also enjoying his meal and making a note to meet with Hinata early because he thought, no, he knew Hinata had passed. XXXXX as her family celebrates her achievement with a feast, Hinata sits at the family table, beaming proudly. Hanabi smiles and giggles as she prods Hinata's side, thrilled that she is now a awesome kunoichi. Livia looks at Heishi, who smiles back and nods in response to an unanswered question. Hinata, Hanabi. I've got some exciting news, she says to her kids, grabbing their attention. Mummy, what's this wonderful news? As she fiddles with her food a bit, Hanabi asks with a smile. You two are going to have a baby brother or sister. Livia tells them, causing Hanabi's eyes to widen in surprise and then to yell in excitement. Hinata, on the other hand, is shocked. She is happy and excited, but this just blindsided her with this. Heishi smiles as Livia giggles as she tries to find the right words. Hinata thinks, a baby brother or sister, mother is pregnant, and, by all logic, it seems possible, but she never had Hanabi and, to a certain extent, Neji, so she never expected another sibling. Nevertheless, she is thrilled to have a sibling to bond with. I'd like a little sister, Hanabi shouts as she gives her mother a hug. Hanabi exclaims, can we have a baby sister? With excitement. This makes Livia and Heishi laugh. As he eats courteously and smiles at his daughter's excitement, Heishi informs her, we don't know yet. He notices Hinata's astonishment, but she displays joy and excitement. He wasn't sure if he should be proud of his daughter's ladylike demeanor and lack of emotion. Hinata? Are you okay? Hinata smiles at her father and nods. Hinata responds, her mind racing, yes, father, I wasn't expecting such great news. She is now aware of how much she has truly altered the course of events. Although she did recall that she was now taking unpredictably high risks, she has created a new life. She smiles for a moment, focusing on the positive outcomes rather than the dangers and anxieties. She had been mentally preparing for what she could do to make the future better, but now she witnessed an unexpected new event. Heishi nods as Hinata says, I look forward to having a new brother or sister. Livia smiles and plants a kiss on the top of Hinata's head, saying, and I know you'll be capable of defending them, and the family. Hinata nods and smiles, knowing that she must, will, or else the world will end. XXXXXXX. While waiting patiently outside the Hokage's office, Naruto and Hinata heard voices coming from the other side. After a short while, the two hear footsteps and turn to see Sasuke approaching them while glaring at them. As Naruto protrudes his tongue, Hinata is taken aback. Glaring at Sasuke, Naruto asks, what are you doing here, Sasuke? Sasuke says in a tone devoid of emotion, I made Genin, dumbass. What are you doing here? With his arms crossed and a further scowl directed at Sasuke, Naruto declares, I made Genin as well, and I'm not a dumbass, you are. A voice on the other side of the door calls for them to come in, and as they do, they see that there are 3 people in the room. Sasuke was about to counter. A very busty, blonde-haired woman of about the same age as the Hokage sits behind his desk, while a gray-haired man who resembles a scarecrow stands in the room. The two turn to face the Hokage after glancing at the new Genin. Hiruzen smiles and leans forward, saying, welcome. Naruto looks at the two and smiles slightly as he says, hey, old man. He says, Kakashi. Everyone looks at him in astonishment. Inquiringly, Kakashi asks, how do you know my name? Naruto smirks and shrugs. He says, I don't know. Everyone gives him a strange look. Once more, Hinata was taken aback by Naruto's knowledge, which he had no prior access to, especially since Kakashi was unfamiliar with him. A little perplexed, the Hokage nods and begins to wonder how Naruto is aware of something. He opens his mouth and gives a temporary shake of his head. He tells them, causing the Genin to look somewhat perplexed, this is Kakashi Hatake, he is going to be your sensei from now on, and this is Samui. She is a former lightning kunoichi that transferred to our country voluntarily. She is going to be a lesser sensei that will help improve your development, he informs them. Naruto raises his hand in question after glancing at the kunoichi. Why is a lightning shinobi going to be our lesser sensei? What happened to the lightning nation to make us get a big-boobed blonde? Samui appears unimpressed as he merely gazes at the blonde Jinchuriki. I'll assume that's a compliment. Hiruzen merely laughs to himself and lowers his hat. There's been a change of power within the lightning nation. Over the years, the civilians of the nation and a large sum of its military power left and joined other nations. Samui is one of these people and we're going to learn and use what military tactics its shinobi and people are willing to offer. He informs them and gets a few perplexed nod. Samui offered to become a sensei for our nation, which we accepted after numerous tests. Sasuke looks at her, unimpressed, and asks, so she's going to teach us how to fight like a lightning ninja? Since it would give him a competitive edge over his brother, he is somewhat interested. Yeah. Samui looks at them and appears more composed than Kakashi, the real leaf ninja, who was reading a book. As Naruto imagines rescuing lords and ladies from terrible and malevolent individuals, he asks, so what are we going to do? What's our first mission? Hiruzen glances at his desk and laughs. As Kakashi and Samui lead the genin away to meet on the rooftops, Hiruzen nods to him and says, well, once you lot get acquainted and talk, Kakashi can show you to the correct room to get your mission assigned to you. XXXXX. The group gave their introductions, with Samui being a woman of few words and Kakashi being extremely evasive. Achieving Hokage would help Naruto realize his dreams of being strong enough to defend the people he truly cares about, so he proudly declares his goals while grinning at Hinata. Hinata tells them that she aspires to be as strong as her father, to help the Hyuga clan come together without division, and to defend the people she cares about. Sasuke's opinions haven't altered, and this time Hinata was uneasy with his cold demeanor. Their first mission was sent to them shortly after they left. Naruto protested that Team 7 was working on D-rank missions. Assisting a former Lightning Nation resident who is relocating to the Hidden Leaf Village as their first ever D-rank mission. Together with the movers, Team 7 was moving containers into the village just outside the walls. A little perplexed by the large number of former Lightning Kunoichi and citizens relocating to other villages, Kakashi asks her, so, Miss Aoi, why did you decide to move into this village in the first place? Although he was aware of the power shift, he was never given the specifics of what transpired there. As she carries her infant, Aoi tells Kakashi, you want to know why? It's because of the failed kidnapping incident. They both smile at the expansive forest scene in which this village is situated. As he and Hinata were carrying a box labeled, fossils, Naruto asks, what do you mean by that, lady? What failed kidnapping incident? The weight of the box makes Naruto wonder if it is filled with rocks or something. Hinata turns and listens to her as well because she wants to know why there is such a large influx of Kunoichi and former Lightning citizens. The fact that all of this occurred as a result of her striking a Lightning shinobi in the balls rather than being abducted astounded her when she learned the fundamentals. Aoi informed them of the fundamentals she was familiar with. Samui, holding a small box, opens her mouth. The main reason why most of us left is because what the Raikage planned on doing to those kidnapped victims. Actually, what he couldn't do. Due to the fact he was forced to release the kidnapped victims. Hinata asks her, what was it, Samui? Afraid of the response. With a tone of obvious disgust at the memory, Samui tells them, he was planning on putting those kidnapped females into some kind of breeding factory. So all of us showed our displeasure to the Raikage about that plan of his, and to think he'd actually believe that we'd actually agreed with that plan. There's also the fact that no one would ever use that kind of plan, since a victim could have a chance to off themselves if they were treated like that. Plus, no other village would even cross that line. Knowing that no one would ever think that kind of plan could work in the first place, Kakashi asks, so all of you just left the village after hearing what your former leader did? Unless the situation was especially gloomy and repulsive. He therefore believes that the Raikage is either insane or perverted in his scheme, or he genuinely thinks that the other villages would truly go beyond that line, which he sincerely hopes will never come to pass. Samui looked at her Hyuga teammate and made a small face, recalling something. Hinata thought to herself, it's a good thing I made that kidnapper fail, or I would have actually killed myself if I was put through such a situation. Are you the Hyuga who stopped your own kidnapping, Hinata? Samui asks her female teammate, who is younger. The question startled Hinata, who momentarily stopped and let Naruto pull the heavy box he couldn't hold, causing it to fall and land on his foot. Naruto screamed in agony as Hinata kept apologizing, and Sasuke rolled his eyes at the sight of him. After Naruto's body was no longer flat and swollen, Hinata turned to face Samui, who was still waiting for an answer. Why yes. I am. Why did you ask that? As Samui walks up to Hinata and takes her hand, she asks. Samui informs her and bows her head, saying, I apologized for what happened to you. With a slight flush on her face, Hinata says, it's alright. It's not your fault. Her mouth was open in shock. Since Naruto was crying, Aoi kissed the side of her baby's head, saying, you know, I'm still very surprised that the Raikage never tried to get back at you or the Hyuga clan. It was a straightforward case of, monkey see, monkey do. What does that mean to you? With his foot still thumping, Naruto asks. It's just that, even though I never participated in the ninja scene, my mother told me a lot about the Raikage. He is extremely arrogant, feels that only his viewpoint should be heard, and punishes anyone who holds a different view. Because I think someone like him would have to regain his damaged pride, I'm a little concerned about that. However, since he is the Raikage, he ought to be aware of what is best for his village given everything that has happened to it. Kakashi responds, I bet he knows not to push his luck, especially the drop in population. Seeing that his team is a little uneasy, he had to say something to calm them down. So let's get back to work. Kakashi says as the group begins to return to work. XXXXX a few miles outside the village, on the edge of the dirt road that leads to the Leaf Village and another to the Trade Village, a small, malnourished girl drags her feet weakly across the ground as she leaves the forest. She is wearing a tattered red t-shirt that is covered in dirt, grass stains, and tears in several places. Her dark, shallow eyes scan the path, looking left and right, and she swallows weakly before returning to the forest, leaning down and sitting down, breathing weakly, shivering weakly, exhausted and starving because she has been traveling from the Lightning Nation for an unknown amount of time, living off of what she finds and begging because no one is willing to take her in. As she looks down at her hand, she notices a tiny puddle form on the back of it. It is silvery and appears to be mercury, shifting and moving, and it continues to touch her before disappearing into the ground. Minutes later, the ground shifts and eventually splits, revealing a mole on a silver spike. She weakly grabs it, tears streaming down her face as she begins to tear into it, her hunger somewhat satiated but not much. I need to keep going, she tells herself, closing her eyes and passing out. It's been a few months since Team Kakashi joined. They completed a number of D-rank missions, and Hinata was relieved that nothing risky had been done. Since Kakashi and Samui have been training them, Naruto has only not requested a higher-ranked mission and has complained out of boredom. But because Hinata knew the advanced and Naruto already knew the fundamentals, Sasuke got frustrated and put in more effort, moving up the levels more quickly than before. Hinata was thrilled that she would be having another sibling when she noticed her mother's growing belly. It did appear that things were shifting. With Hiruzen in charge of the Breach family, the Hyuga clan did appear to gain some strength, though animosity still existed, albeit not as much as it did previously. Who knows what else is changing in the world, and the Leaf's power has grown. While the rest of her team arrives, Hinata waits on a carriage. She is anxious because Naruto was able to secure them a C-rank mission. A number of merchants who intend to visit the Waterfall Nation are being escorted by them. Samui and Sasuke have already arrived. Naruto and Kakashi have not yet arrived, though he tries not to show it. Hinata is distressed when she thinks of Naruto. He tries desperately to control his short fuse, stress, and insomnia brought on by the night terrors and things he doesn't discuss. Other than his arms returning, she doesn't think that has any chance of bringing back memories, but she does think there's some connection to her coming back to this life. A voice behind Hinata's ear says, "Hey." She jumps and turns to face Naruto, blushing slightly. "Am I late?" she asks. Looking into his blue eyes and noticing the fatigue and black bags beneath them, Hinata shakes her head. Where have you been?" Naruto asks, grinning, as he hops beside her and kisses her forehead while they wait for Kakashi. With a slight smile, Naruto leans back and says, "Just mum making sure I'm packed." He gestures to a huge bag he put on the caravan. As the two wait and engage in small talk, Hinata chuckles a little. Kakashi quickly shows up and apologizes for being late because a black cat was in his way. After getting ready, the group started to leave. Team Kakashi dispersed to evenly protect the numerous wagons, caravans, and carts loaded with goods. XXXXX they make good time as they travel for several hours. The merchants were pleasant individuals who had learned a great deal and encountered many fascinating things. Hinata and Naruto discovered some fascinating facts, as well as some secret paths that allow for quicker travel. The wagons slow down and eventually stop. Looking ahead, Naruto and Hinata see Kakashi disembarking from a wagon and continuing on in confusion. Looking around, Naruto sees nothing and turns to see Samui sitting there, unconcerned. When Naruto sees Sasuke sitting on the cart in front of him, he calls out, "Hey! What's going on, Sasuke?" Sasuke looks back and shrugs, not seeming particularly concerned. With a sigh, Naruto leaps away and approaches Kakashi. When he notices someone lying on the road, he quickly understands why they stopped and becomes alarmed. A girl isn't moving at all and is wearing a torn outfit that has been nearly destroyed by the weather. Naruto approaches slowly and with some concern as Kakashi stoops to check her pulse. The girl took a sharp breath, causing Kakashi to pull his arm back in surprise and Naruto to jump in fear. The girl lies on her back after Kakashi moves her and removes a water bottle. She coughs weakly as he raises her head and runs some water down her throat. Naruto looks at her and notices that she is severely malnourished and partially dehydrated. Is she alright? He asks. The tattoo, 31, appears on the back of her right hand, catching his attention. Kakashi gently picks her up and quickly returns to the wagon he was riding in, telling Naruto, "No, she's very weak, ill, and malnourished." With an anxious expression, the wagon driver rummages through the rear and extracts some food. He promptly offers it to Kakashi, who accepts it but gives the girl a tiny bit as she starts to lose consciousness. Naruto leaps to his feet and looks at the girl, asking, "Why don't you give it all to her?" Kakashi looks back the way they came and sighs as she tells him, she can't eat a lot, her stomach has shrunk, if she eats too much, she'll end up throwing up what she's eaten. The wagon driver nods when Kakashi says, "We'll have to stop off at a village to have her taken care of properly." They begin to move once more, but more quickly now. "What happened?" she asks, getting up to try to get a better look as Naruto leaps back over to Hinata and lands next to her. She looks curiously at what Kakashi was doing. In response, he grabs his head and says, "Hopefully, she'll be okay. I found a homeless girl, she's about our age, she's as skinny as a rake, and she has a number on the back of her hand, not sure if it means anything." Hinata looks at him, a little worried, but pleased that Naruto cares about people, even strangers, as he always does. As the two continue to observe the road ahead, a voice asks, "What was that about a number?" from behind them. The two leap, turn to face Samui, and see him standing on the cargo. "Don't do that!" yells Naruto, who is irritated by Samui's silence and somehow approaches everyone without warning. Samui looks more serious than normal as she tells him to cool off. "What was that about a number on the back of the hand?" she asks. With a slightly perplexed expression, Naruto says, "It's the number 31. Samui gives a nod. When the Raikage released the kidnapped victims, those we saw were tattooed with numbers. He apparently had them tattooed with numbers when taken so they could make easier track on them." Astonished, the two turn to face Kakashi's cart and ask, "So, was she one of the kidnapped victims?" Looking in the same direction as Naruto, Samui says, "Possibly." Though they don't know what the girl went through, Hinata and Naruto feel sorry for her because they know it's something neither of them would want to go through. The two believe Samui is there to help her check on the girl when she leaps over the carts and lands on Kakashi. With a small sigh, Naruto takes Hinata's hand and gives her a small smile in an attempt to console her. XXXXX After traveling and reaching a nearby village, they made the decision to stay in the hopes of meeting someone who worked in medicine. They managed to locate a physician, but he lacked experience. However, he was aware of a more skilled physician in the village of the river flow who might be able to assist. Kakashi promised to go get the doctor, but Hinata and Naruto volunteered as well because they wanted to help her as soon as possible. Until they returned, Sasuke and Samui remained to assist with setting up rooms and shifts. XXXXX Naruto, Kakashi, and Hinata were navigating the forest. "How much longer is it?" asks Naruto, who is growing bored and experiencing an obnoxious eyelid spasm. Kakashi leaps across the tree branches and declares, "We're about halfway there." Hinata, who recalls Naruto's whining in his previous life, smiles at him as he groans in frustration. Kakashi glances around, listens, and then abruptly stops, extending his arm to get the genin to stop. "What's up, Kakashi?" Naruto and Hinata are forced to listen when Kakashi says, "Listen." Naruto tells him, "What? I don't hear nothing." Hinata listens and asks, "Is that what you mean?" But she doesn't hear anything. They listen as much as they can, but they soon hear it, explosions. Kakashi tells them, "There is nothing, no animals, no wind, almost like a bad omen. But listen carefully as you can." Naruto listens to them and asks, "What's going on?" Kakashi says, "Let's hurry," with some concern. "I don't know, but it sounds like it's coming from the village we're heading to." The group moves as quickly as they can for a minute. As he leads the two genin, Kakashi questions whether it was the right decision to have them follow him. As he looks ahead, he hears something and feels the ground tremble. The Leaf Ninja could sense the power of the explosion, which happens a few miles away but has a huge radius. The forest itself appears to be pushed away from the explosion, branches, leaves, and splinters as the wind suddenly gets stronger. Kakashi dodges all projectiles by swiftly ducking beneath a large branch. Astonished by what is happening, Hinata is caught off guard and raises her arms to block. After being grabbed and pushed to the ground, Hinata feels a warm embrace. "Naruto!" Hinata cries, worried for his safety, as she sees Naruto shielding her from the big splinters, branches, and even rocks that hit him. He did not move. The wind dies as abruptly as it appeared after a few moments. Naruto gets to his feet shakily, his knees trembling like jelly. As he makes his way back up to the branch, Kakashi notices that many of the trees in the area have been badly damaged, some of them even torn through. When Kakashi turns to face Naruto's back, his eyes enlarge with shock and surprise. His back was punctured by multiple stakes and splinters the size of fingers, and a portion of his scalp was even ripped off. Naruto appeared to be about to pass out, so Hinata gets to his feet while clinging to his forearms. After assuming the majority of Naruto's weight, Kakashi emerged behind him and started to worry. Knowing that the doctor should assist Naruto if he is still in the village, he informs Hinata that he has Naruto and that they must relocate to learn more. He swallows and asks Kami to believe that the explosion did not occur where he thinks it did. For a few minutes, they move slowly and carefully because Kakashi didn't want to aggravate any of Naruto's wounds. In order to avoid wasting chakra, Hinata continues to move forward while keeping her eyes open and occasionally using her Byakugan. She stops abruptly and appears frightened as she activates her Byakugan once more. When Kakashi sees this, he turns to face her, closely observes her, and asks, "What is it?" Feeling a little uneasy, she tells Kakashi, "T2 ninja, one of them J just died. B both aren't L leaf ninja, S stone ninja." This information confuses Kakashi, who looks at her. He is aware that they are only a few days away from the Earth Nation and that they are still in the Fire Nation. Why were they here? He is thinking about this as he gradually starts to move in the direction of the spot Hinata was searching for. After a short while, he tells Naruto to wait and puts him on the ground. As directed, Hinata and Naruto wait, but they soon hear conversation. While Naruto appears to enter a trance as he hears the voices, Hinata becomes slightly alarmed and activates her Byakugan to protect Kakashi. A young voice yells, "Back the fuck off, don't make me show you my art," with a tone of sadness, rage, and fear. The ninja appears to Hinata to be in his early teens, with long, blonde hair that resembles Ino's, and a standard, albeit partially ruined, stone shinobi uniform. Though she was unable to identify it, Hinata couldn't help but feel that he looked familiar from her previous life. Kakashi tells him, "Calm down, what happened here and why are you in the Fire Nation?" Hinata notices him raise his hand to indicate he is not malicious. He yells once more, "Fuck off, I'll show you my art otherwise," and draws a kunai, which Hinata observes being charged with chakra. Too preoccupied with the scene, she fails to notice Naruto getting up and passing by. Kakashi tells him, "Just calm down," in a firm, menacing voice. Suddenly, Hinata sees Naruto coming into view and rushes over to him. When the blonde stone shinobi sees Naruto, he turns to face Kakashi. "You know what? Fuck it, I'll show you my art, and my art is an explo." He started, but his chin was abruptly struck by a foot, sending it flying back and into the air. Deidara feels himself launch several feet into the air and his teeth crack from the unexpected blow. After striking the older boy in the face, Naruto is crouching where he was with his foot outstretched. Naruto's eyes are slitted, crimson red, and filled with pure rage. Kakashi is stunned and surprised by what has just happened, and Hinata is in the same state, frozen in shock. XXX The mindscape of Naruto seated on a white clay mound, Naruto remains still. Since the mound appears to be human-shaped at one point, his eyes spot a sizable hole in what might have been his chest. Somehow, he sees and feels what appears to be a huge white clay bird's shell. He looks into it and sees the motionless body of a late-teen, red-haired boy. He doesn't know him, but he feels as though he has lost a loved one. As the range increases, Naruto observes the burns and healing of his knuckle scars, which eventually leave only a blood stain. His muscles get stronger and his teeth get sharper as the range increases and red chakra consumes him. The taste of his blood is all he can sense the need for as his range keeps expanding. The phrase he was known to utter, "My art is an explosion," kept coming to him. XXX Before kicking off, Naruto looks up, growls, and makes a hand signal. A number of smoke clouds emerge from the ground, and a number of clones appear out of nowhere. The young adolescent appears to be several feet below Naruto. Abruptly, his fist flies downward and strikes the stone shinobi's face. The boy's mouth and nose spray blood, sending him flying to the ground and smashing into it. The shinobi is pinned to the ground as the shadow clones seize his limbs. The real Naruto quickly uses another shadow clone as a land base and jumps down, causing his knee to point downward and slam into his stomach as he falls violently. His mouth splatters blood, and Naruto strikes him with his right fist. After hearing a cracking sound, Kakashi quickly realizes what is happening and rushes in Naruto's direction. The area is blown away as Naruto's chakra rises quickly. With his feet digging into the ground and his chakra attempting to hold him there, Kakashi swiftly raises his arms. Unable to stop himself, Naruto roars as he slams his fist into the boy, feeling the anger growing as the images race through his head. Unable to do anything, the blonde stone shinobi continues to take hits, feeling the startlingly strong blows slowly crush his face. He actually feels his left eye burst from the blows, and he loses sight in it. As he begins to choke on his blood, he feels the blows stop and his own teeth break in his mouth. The closest shadow clone swiftly patted around Naruto's right arm, creating a reddish-blue sphere before slamming it into his chest as he saw him pull it back in his blurry vision of his remaining eye. His organs in his chest cavity are reduced to mush, bones and flesh are vaporized, and blood sprays everywhere. Before his vision goes dead, the blonde boy looks at what happened in a blank manner. As the chakra abruptly drops, Kakashi coughs in discomfort, bewildered and shocked by what has just transpired. He watches as Naruto abruptly passes out, his clones detonate, and the two people who are left stare in disbelief, not knowing how to react. The two watch the sky crack quickly and the world around them change. The world gradually returns to normal after it abruptly stops, but the sky is still cracked. Fear is evident in Hinata's voice and body as she asks, "K Kakashi sensei, what happened?" Totally taken aback by what transpired, Kakashi approaches Naruto and gently picks him up. When he examines Naruto, he finds that his prior wounds have healed, but he still has multiple burns on his body. Being totally honest, Kakashi tells her, "I don't know Hinata," and then looks up at the sky, not sure what just happened. Hinata approaches slowly, pulls out a cloth, and gently wipes the blood off Naruto's hand. She sees the boy's bloody remains when she looks down. When she finally recognizes that he is someone from the Akatsuki list, her eyes enlarge. Deidara begins to question how this occurred and what killing him actually means. He was the cause of Gaara's brief death and the hidden sand villages near annihilation. She now questions whether Deidara's passing was the reason for the abrupt harm to the world or something else because he killed a lot of people and destroyed a lot. What do we do? Although both parties were at fault, Kakashi tells her that Naruto's Nine Tails eruption complicated matters. We continue with our objective. I will have to tell the Hokage what happened. XXXXX Deidara's body and that of his already deceased companion are left by the leaf. Soon after, they arrive and stare in disbelief at what they see. They can see the edge of a waterfall that somehow survived the explosion, as well as a massive, flooding crater from a nearby, violent river. Although it was no longer there, Kakashi was aware that the village was, in the center of the crater. Kakashi scans the area for any indication of survivors, but he finds none. Knowing that there was a big barge that was railed by a wire to enable swift and secure transportation by river, he lowers Naruto and leans him against a tree while gazing at the crater. He does hope that the boat was used to get the people out of the blast radius. Kakashi instructs Hinata to keep an eye on Naruto while he investigates the area. Sitting next to Naruto, Hinata examines his unconscious form with anxiety while gripping his hand. "Naruto, I wish you would tell me what is going on. I know something is wrong. I can feel your suffering and it's all I can do to support you and help." Hinata sighs, reaches for his cheek, cups it, and smiles pitifully at Naruto. "Do you remember the past like I do? Do you feel the Nine Tails? I don't know what makes you..." Hinata starts, but she stops talking and sheds a few tears. The woman leans forward and kisses his forehead, saying, what happened? I wish I could take your pain away. I'll love you, and I always will." After a brief moment of kissing, she lowers her head, letting their foreheads meet, smiles slightly, and squeezes his hand. Naruto's eyes are moving quickly, and his breathing suddenly quickens. "Gaara," Naruto whispers, his teeth sharpening and Hinata's eyes widening even more as Hinata leans back, gripping his hand tightly, and looks at him hopeful. She became confused and became serious when Naruto mentioned the name of someone he had never met before. He appears to relax as she holds onto his hand and gently rubs her thumb over his skin. Slowly, painfully, and weakly, Naruto opens his eyes. Confusion begins to set in as he looks at Hinata and notices the uncertainty, wonder, and anxiety in her eyes. What happened?" he asks. A little afraid to ask, Hinata swallows and turns to face him. Naruto, why did you do that? How do you know Jigara's name? She asks. Naruto appears perplexed, with a migraine tearing through his brain and flashes racing through his head. Holding it, Naruto screams in agony as he recalls his actions and motivations. Holding onto his skull, Naruto collapses to his side and assumes the fetal position. In a panic, Hinata tries to assist Naruto but is at a loss for what to do. After vomiting for a minute, with his body trembling, Naruto slowly sits back up while holding his head. Jigara, I don't know, he says, his head still hurting and obviously upset by what he witnessed. When Hinata looks at him, she is upset by Naruto's expression and can tell that he knows, but he is also unsure. Looking directly into his eyes, Hinata asks, and Naruto, do you see things? Do why you see things, that seem familiar. But why you don't know how? Hinata asks anxiously. Why yeah, I know faces, I don't know how, Naruto tells her, gripping the sides of his head, looking at her with some confusion and nodding. I see wars, fighting, the familiar face of everyone I have never met, he tells her, trembling a little and feeling queasy. I keep seeing them, fighting people I never met, fighting wars that I've never heard of, killing things I've never seen before, Naruto confesses to her for the first time what he dreams about. He's been having trouble sleeping and has only gotten a few hours of sleep this past week because it makes him sick to try to remember everything. Naruto feels some relief as he keeps breathing more heavily, but now that he acknowledges it, he is sick of it. Astonished by what she just heard, Hinata turns to face him. Though it's obvious he doesn't remember everything, he only has something from the future to go by. Her suspicions were confirmed, and Naruto does remember things. Hinata grips him tightly in an attempt to get rid of that repulsive expression on his face, and she can feel a damp patch on her shoulder. She remembers all the negative things that will happen in the future and realizes that he has been crying for this long. Her eyes widen as she realizes he is crying and begins to cry herself. With their faces pressed against each other's necks, the two hold each other while sobbing for several minutes and struggling to breathe. But neither of them breathes, they just remain motionless. And Naruto, she started, but then she heard a footstep. She escapes Naruto's hold and turns to see a figure emerge from the surrounding tree line. Naruto glances, and the two quickly realize it's not someone they know. They leap to their feet, adopt prepared positions, and maintain their positions. When they see the figure come into plain sight, confusion quickly sets in. It is difficult to tell because he is so badly burned, but it was undoubtedly a man. His right side is completely black, and every step he takes causes the skin to peel off, making it more like a weak, agonizing shuffle. The man's attire, or what's left of it, is black, old, and heavily burned. His traditional armor is literally hanging on a thread on his left side, while the right side has either melted into his skin or been blown away. The man's face appeared the most startling. A third of his face was burned, his right eye, or what was left of it, was leaking out of its socket, his hair was mostly burned off, and his left eye appeared to be unfocused. As the two genin are stunned by the man's injuries and their nostrils are filled with the stench of charred flesh, the man extends his left hand in their direction. After just 2 steps, the man collapses, face down in the ground, and stays there, still, with blood oozing from the fissures on his charred body. After being motionless for what seems like an eternity, Naruto takes the initiative. He swiftly goes to assist the man as best he can after taking the Hyuga clan's secret ointment out of his pouch. When Hinata sees this, she tries to stop him because she knows Naruto cannot help the ointment. When Hinata sees Naruto's resolve in his eyes, she stops herself because she knows he feels bad about killing someone he doesn't really know and that he wants to make amends by saving someone. She is a few paces away and is shocked that Naruto is suppressing her disgust at the stench because she knows that if she were any closer, she would throw up. Determined to save him, Hinata looks around and tells Naruto that she will go get Kakashi before disappearing. XXX standing close to the river, Kakashi looks around and into the neighboring forest, but all he sees is ash, fallen trees, and debris. He lets out a sigh and moves on to look in another direction, but he hears something. As he looks, he soon spots what appears to be a barge, but the majority of it is in the water and trembling quickly. Kakashi soon notices that there are people on it. He glances quickly at the river, fully aware that the greater of the shinobi who ventured to cross its waters had been vanquished by the violent river. Kakashi looks around and quickly pulls away from the water while cursing. As he removes his headband to reveal his Sharingan, he observes the boat sinking and even a person being drawn into the water. Even though he is aware that the boat is on its way to the waterfall and that he has a limited amount of time to save them, Kakashi knows it will be difficult. As the barge starts to tilt backwards, its tip now pointing upward, he dashes forward, sprinting at full speed, and launches himself across the wide, raging river. As he starts his rescue, Kakashi says to himself, "This is going to be close." His hand grabs the boat's banister, his chakra coursing through his fingers to hold on, and his feet crash into the walkway of the slowly tilting boat. After a few minutes, the barge has plummeted down the waterfall, with steam and smoke rising from the base. Steam is all that remains after bits of flame escape the water and are nearly instantly consumed. A few dozen feet above the steam and wreckage, half a dozen Kakashi are holding civilians on the end of a long, twisted wire that cuts into the edge. They cling to one another like a human chain. The wire is slicing into his skin and clothes as the person holding it grits his teeth. Blood slowly trickles down his arm as the wire is knotted and twisted around his wrist. Soon after, a trembling voice from beneath Kakashi asks, "Are we okay?" as blood drops fall onto their face. The waterfall is so loud that Kakashi hardly hears them. In an attempt to get himself up, he grits his teeth. The pain causes his left forearm muscles to twitch, and he lets go. Kakashi responds by grinding his teeth as the wire pierces his skin further. As soon as they realize this, the shadow clones begin their best effort to scale the human rope. Their hands are full, though, and one of them needs to have a free hand in order to climb. After losing a few innocents in the raging river and the waterfall, they all begin planning a strategy to rescue them all. The best-case scenario would likely be those they saved prior to the barge collapsing when the shadow clones carried and leapt from it, but they are aware that their time is running out. Not everyone made it, but hopefully those who did will. Kakashi clings to those below, doing his best to stay conscious, but he's starting to feel the pain. The blood is beginning to slow down, but as the weight gets to it, the wires are cutting into new blood vessels, causing his nerves to ache sharply and continuously. Kakashi's eyes flutter as the shock gradually wears off on him. The wire tightens abruptly, and as it slashes into the stone, the human rope gradually begins to rise. A few of Kakashi's clones can be seen tugging on the wire on the ledge. Behind them, a number of rescued civilians grab the clones' backs and begin to pull as well. They all exert a lot of force, drawing the wire upward as it keeps slicing through Kakashi's flesh, stone, and soil. After a few seconds, Kakashi is doing his best to stay conscious. Before long, he senses his arm twisting and his side rubbing against the canyon's rocky, damp rocks. Those clinging to his limbs are soon seized and removed from the weight as hands quickly seize him and pull him to his feet. Everyone was pulled out of the canyon after a few seconds. As the clones disperse, Kakashi's left arm twitches in pain and he slowly sits up. "Is everyone all right?" he asks as he slowly and feebly gets to his feet. By exerting pressure and raising his forearm, he manages to keep it in the most comfortable position possible. With his hands glowing green as he repairs and closes some blood vessels, a man inspects his wound and says, "I believe we would have been worse off if you hadn't have shown up. The wires are cut deep in your arm. I don't feel confident enough to pull the wires out without causing further damage, so I'm going to do my best that no infections occur and I'm going to have to focus so you don't lose your limb." As the healing process progresses, Kakashi nods and looks at him. He feels some nerve endings reattach. What happened here? While some of the survivors appear depressed, others sob and withdraw to their solitude. Slowly, some turn to face a small group, while others appear to be family members or merchants. Kakashi is aware of this and even harbors animosity toward them. With tears streaming down her cheeks, a woman utters, "They came here with Leaf Ninja. They came with thugs on their trail and made our home a war zone." The small family is singled out by the group's merchants as they gradually retreat. An elderly man with a dejected expression in his eyes, gray hair from aging, and bright robes that have turned dark from blood, mud, and water make up the family. A girl who may be a few years younger than Naruto is in his hands. Her hair is as black as her outfit, which seemed more akin to a funeral kimono. Because of the dark clothing, it was hard to tell that the older man's clothing was the one that was stained. A woman in her early 20s with a disheveled brown complexion stands next to them. She wore a lime green kimono, but it was a discolored mess. Behind them, there is movement, and soon a 3-year-old boy is seen clinging to the elder man's leg. Something from one of Kakashi's shadow clones comes back to him. Memory of the shadow clone. Kakashi's clones leap into rooms as he slides down an angled hallway. As he slides down the floor and comes to a stop a few feet from the water that fills the hallway, Kakashi channels his chakra into his right hand and feet. Without even using Sharingan, he could tell that if someone fell into the water, they would be sucked into oblivion as he watched the water violently flow up and down, He hears the sound of sobbing. He glances quickly to his left and sees a door. Two Kakashi clones then swiftly open the door after sliding down. The shadow clones of Kakashi climb in as a small team. Kakashi hears a cry of agony and terror. He notices a middle-aged woman pinned to the wall below, and his eyes widen in mild surprise. It quickly becomes apparent to him that she is pinned by a number of metal spikes that were ripped from the wall, and that furniture has also slid into them. Kakashi is aware that the task of removing her from the spikes will be hazardous. He sees that the woman is holding a small boy as movement comes from beneath her. He hears a woman yell, "Help us!" He notices a woman in a lime green kimono who is pregnant. A young girl is also holding onto a broken pipe that she is holding onto. To keep the expectant mother from falling, the younger one clings to her. The two women are approached by the clones of Kakashi. Near the bottom of the room, just inches from the water, they both spot an elderly man who appears to be another civilian. To help the old man, one of the clones leaps down and slides down. The third Kakashi descends to help the pinned woman and the child she is holding, while the second shadow clone rushes to aid the two women. When he gets to her, he swiftly removes the child from her grasp and cradles the boy against his chest. The pinned woman screams in agony as he tries to assist her. "Don't!" cries the woman in agony. She looks at Kakashi with pain, fear, and rage as she grabs his shoulder. The woman tells him, "Just take the boy and my family. Just take them and run." Kakashi felt a startling amount of pain as her grip tightened. She lets go of him quickly, and as she says a silent prayer, her breathing quickens and she swallows painfully. Kakashi notices the water rising quickly as he looks down. The clones have swiftly made their way to the exit after saving the elderly man and the other two females. Kakashi nods to the woman and holds the boy close, knowing that she won't live if he takes her away, but he can't put an end to her suffering while the child is around. With a curse, he hastily begins to ascend to the door, abandoning the woman as the water gradually consumes her. "Clone the memory of the shadow. They brought them. They're to blame," yells another, their rage audible. Holding onto his arm as the doctor continues to heal it, Kakashi slowly stands up and coughs in agony. "Stop, I'm sure everyone has lost someone. However, right now, we've got to get out of here. My team are stationed at a nearby village. We have a girl in desperate need of attention. We can't stay here." All they do is glare at Kakashi and the family. Some appear to take an intimidating stance against the family as they get ready to depart, with some even wishing to harm them. Some people jump when a new figure leaps into the small mass, but Kakashi recognized it as Hinata. "Hey Kakashi-sensei," she said, quickly noticing his wound and becoming alarmed. When he indicates that he is fine, Hinata nods and goes on to say, "Kakashi-sensei, N Naruto and IF found an injury M-man. He is very badly wounded. He is severely burnt on one side. It also, IF found something that isn't normal." Looking at her, a little perplexed, Kakashi asks, "What do you mean normal?" in reference to what she observed. Hinata's recollection and description. Hinata had been following Kakashi's trail for a few minutes when she occasionally activated her Byakugan to make sure she was on the right path. She then activated it again and saw traces of chakra that she recognized as belonging to Kakashi, but she stopped when something caught her eye. Her eyes were wide with shock and confusion as she approached the scene, gradually getting closer until she reached it. Despite the soft, overturned dirt from the previous explosion, Hinata can still see two footprints on the ground in front of her that have not been disturbed, and she can also make out some tree stumps. Using her Byakugan, Hinata can see that the size and shape of the creature before was enormous in comparison to a normal human being, and she is aware of the fundamentals of how powerful the explosion was. She looks back and sees the center of the explosion, knowing that it was close range and should have vaporized anyone and everything. After scanning the area and spotting some footprints, she heads to follow them when her Byakugan detects movement behind her. She recognizes the movement as belonging to a civilian and soon spots a group of them hurrying along the river's edge. She glances back at the track, but shakes her head and quickly rushes in the direction of the civilians. Finish nodding to his, Kakashi looks around the group and notices that the singled-out family seems to be looking at each other. He starts to wonder why, but then he remembers that Hinata told him about the injured man, so he quickly points everyone in the direction he left Naruto and Hinata, assuming that's where they are now. Hinata takes the lead, and Kakashi follows, helping those who are having trouble moving. XXXXX. The doctor rushes over to Naruto's position, and after a few minutes of the small group of people running along the dirt crater as fast as they can, they all arrive at Naruto's location and see the blonde boy kneeling over a severely burned man. They are shocked by the man's condition, But they soon realize that Naruto is doing something unexpected, and they see that his hands are green and glowing, his teeth grinding as he continues to try to heal the man, his face focused, and his arms shaking as he tries to mold his chakra to repair and heal, even though his chakra is mostly wasted and not helping the man much. Naruto. When did you learn medical ninjutsu? Kakashi and Hinata stop by his side, and the doctor quickly gets to the injured man's side. His hands go on Naruto's, pushing them aside, and his own hands start glowing green as he starts healing. Hinata sits next to Naruto, taking hold of his hand and smiling, comforting him as best she can. Naruto exhales deeply, coughing a little because he just spent a lot of chakra doing very little effect on healing, but he knows it wasn't in vain, and it helped for everyone. With a little cough, Naruto laughs and says, "Mother taught me, but I don't have great chakra control." With his hands burning from attempting the jutsu, Naruto tells her, "It wears me out." Hinata smiles, takes his hand, and helps him up so he can escape the stench of burnt flesh. The doctor turns to face Kakashi and whispers in his ear, "This man's injuries are severe," as Kakashi leans down to examine the injured man. The doctor, feeling ill as he continues to heal, but finding little purpose in it, murmurs, "It's a miracle he's even alive." "How likely is he?" Kakashi asks, keeping his attention on the wounded man. "He's probably 20% dead right now, but if you told me about his injuries, I'd say he's dead. All of that simply depends on his desire to live." When Naruto and Hinata hear this, they both nod because death is inevitable. Naruto is more depressed because he did everything he could to save his life, but it is more difficult for him to know that his efforts were in vain. Naruto gets up and leaves slowly, desiring some fresh air, while Hinata keeps him company. The pregnant woman from earlier is holding the girl's hand as Kakashi notices movement out of the corner of his eye. The two of them look at the injured man, crouching together as the woman takes his hand while the girl sobs. She starts, her voice choking a little from emotion, "I thought you died." A little perplexed, Kakashi glances at the two before turning to face the elderly man. "You know this man?" "He is my grandson, Fumio," the old man says, nodding, his face saddened by the man's fate. "We belong to the Tetsu clan and are homeless." As he reflects on the past, Kakashi looks at him, a little perplexed, wondering why the Tetsu clan was familiar. Then it dawns on him, and he looks at the elder blankly. "You're from the Earth Nation," he says. "Why are you in the Fire Nation, if I may ask?" "There was a conflict within the nations," the elder says with a sorrowful shake of his head. "We had battles with a new clan that could shape chakra into explosive power, and our clan is very old." With a dejected expression on his face, the elderly man states, "The explosive core didn't stop. They hunted us and we fled. We fought and our clan lost, we lost our main branch, and we are all that's left, perhaps save for a few that fled. With the caravan merchants, we sought refuge. We submitted a request to the Hidden Leaf village for shelter." With no trace of dishonesty in his eyes, Kakashi nods in agreement with this information. "And you were tracked down? Wouldn't you be escorted to the Leaf by a team?" "A team was present. To buy us time, they stayed in the village with my sons, nephew, and grandson." The old man looks at Fumio and says, "The only blessing we have now, thanks to your timely rescue," with a faint smile that fades a moment later. "When the explosions happened, we thought everyone died. Even though everyone here has died too much, the explosion core should think we are doomed." Holding onto his arm, Kakashi nods as he surveys the group before turning to face the wounded man and letting out a small sigh. "We must leave this area," he says. "The sooner we get people to the village to recuperate and have their wounds examined, the better." Naruto makes a few shadow clones and transforms them into stretchers, and he makes a couple more to use in carrying the injured, but half of them explode as soon as they appear, and Naruto collapses to his knees and throws up. People nod, and some of them glare at the family. As the rest of the clones pick up the stretchers with the injured, Hinata panics and quickly kneels by his side, wrapping her left arm around his back and her right arm around his front. Kakashi approaches Naruto and checks on him, saying, "He's used a lot of chakra, don't use any more, Naruto." Kakashi helps him up and looks around. After confirming that the man is on the stretcher and that he can leave him for a minute, the doctor approaches Kakashi, checks on his arm, and when he takes it, his hands glow green. "I have to circulate the blood flow every once in a while," he says. "It will hurt if I don't, and you might lose the limb." As he moves his hand and even feels blood running around it, Kakashi nods and clenches his teeth slightly. "All right, get out." After the doctor is done, Kakashi says. XXXXX. The small group of survivors made it to the designated village after a long and agonizing journey. The people there were alarmed by the explosion and were relieved that some people survived. The Tetsu clan members were waiting outside the small medical clinic with a few others, waiting for friends or family to be checked on. Naruto and Hinata were inside the clinic because they do have some knowledge of healing, however limited. Both Hinata and Naruto were silent the entire time, but Hinata kept her eyes on Naruto, feeling compelled to tell him everything, to tell him the truth of his visions, to tell him that she, too, is from the future, even though he may not be entirely from the future. They worked together to ensure that all injuries were being treated with the proper procedures, and they could still smell Fumio, the heavily burned ninja, who somehow managed to survive the journey. Naruto does appear to be in a better mood than he was before. They work for several minutes. Soon, people were allowed to enter to check on their families and friends. Hinata sees the Tetsu clan members walk in and check on Fumio. The few stood by his side, praying for him, and the women were crying. Hinata looks and does see the elder of the clan. He does seem distracted and looking at someone else. She looks, seeing that he's looking at the girl they saved on the road, still weak and malnourished as before. Though she does look like there's more color in her skin, and she sees an IV drip attached to her. She is confused to why he's staring at her, but she goes to help bandage an elderly lady's ankle. After several seconds, she looks back and the elderly man is now by the girl's side, holding her hand. He holds it like a grandfather would, but she does see his eyes are very focused on the girl. She soon sees a small flash of light and spots a scalpel in the elder's hand. Her eyes widen in shock as the blade goes on the girl's abdomen. She sees the blade rest on it and she quickly panics. Hinata drops the bandages and rushes to stop him, seeing him only balance it with a finger. She quickly goes to smack it out of his hand, but he pushes it into the girl. Hinata tackles the elderly man, surprising him, and people witness this, and they do see a small trail of blood coming from the girl. Hinata quickly gets up, checking on the girl, but she's surprised that the amount of blood isn't that of what she was expecting. She looks round, soon noticing something unusual and seeing the scalpel handle. Soon after, Hinata feels a forceful blow to her arm, causing her to yell in agony and look down. She then sees the young girl, whom she believes to be the elder's granddaughter, staring at her angrily before heading to assist the elder. What happened? Naruto shouts and rushes over. With a glance at Naruto, the elder, and then back at Naruto, Hinata said, "I saw him," before turning to pick up the scalpel handle, which is only a third of it and appears to have melted away, leaving no other metal visible. They live, she lives, the Tetsu clan, they live, the elder says, a tear streaming down his cheek as he simply sits smiling. Everyone in the room appears perplexed by his statement. "Sabrio, what do you mean?" The pregnant woman looks at the girl and looks at her closely as she asks in a bewildered manner. Looking as serious as she can be for her age, Hinata turns to face the girl and the elderly man and asks, "What are you talking about?" Hinata demands as she closely examines him and even uses her Byakugan to detect lies in the smallest facial expressions, chakra shifts, or even changes in repertory. "The main branch of my clan was assassinated, which was the beginning of the conflict between the Tetsu and Explosive Corps. They claimed to have sent an emissary, but in reality, he was a suicide bomber. He set off a bomb that destroyed the entire compound, taking with it what we thought was our clan's entire main branch as well as numerous others. There were 2 heiresses in the matriarchal Tetsu clan. One, though, passed away during training prior to the incident. With tears streaming down his cheek and joy evident on his face, he says, the other was thought to have died, but this, she lives. He also appears to be in pain from remembering all the people who have passed away." The pregnant woman chuckles slightly in surprise as she says, "By Kami, I don't know what to say." Looking at the Tetsu clan members, Hinata, Naruto, and the civilians inside are perplexed. Naruto speaks up, appearing as perplexed as anyone at the moment. "So this girl is what, your niece or something? I feared the Tetsu clan would blow away into the wind, but with the heiress alive, then they shall come," the elder says, nodding as he slowly stands up and his bones click. "You're not assembling an army to exact revenge, are you?" Nervous a little, Naruto asks. "Oh my gods, no," the elder says, shaking his head and laughing. "I hope that some of my family members survived, while others ran away." "Wow, so it must have been fate," Naruto says with a slight smile as he nods and turns to face Hinata, who can see that he is telling the truth. "About a day ago, we located her. After that, we found you guys while searching for the doctor. It's like fate," Naruto says with a small laugh. Hinata's mind goes into overdrive. She's been taking notes, and this kind of went overboard with unexpected and even amused by Naruto's statement. She knows that this girl, Atsutane, was taken as part of the lightning kidnapping victims. She's been taking notes, and if they hadn't found her, they would have gone to the destroyed village and saved everyone. She's worried that things are changing to unknown threats, but because of her new life, a family has reunited after being apart for an unknown amount of time. She's a little taken aback by the specific requirements to have the two meet and survive. Aware that Naruto has experienced visions, Hinata tentatively approaches him, hoping that she can talk to someone who will at least understand the situation. And Naruto, can I talk with you later? She asks in a trembling tone. They all begin to be who they wanted to be by their sides, wishing everyone a speedy recovery while everyone with medical experience makes sure that is possible. Naruto notices this, nods in response, and watches her return to work during the unusual family reunion. XXXXX late at night, Hinata lies on her bed with her eyes down, too exhausted to do much else, and Naruto lies in his bedroll, groaning in agony as his arms burn and his stomach growls. Hinata, Naruto calls, his voice worn out and in pain. Yeah. Naruto? Hinata responds with a call, looks in his direction, and inhales deeply to arouse her further. Have you ever wanted to speak with me? Naruto asks as he tries to roll over, but his arms are killing him. If they were stronger, he's fairly certain they'd be trying to kill him by wrapping them around his neck. Hinata flinches as she recalls and winks in agony. Why yes, she replies, and then she slowly moves out of bed, shuffles her feet in Naruto's direction, and carefully sits down next to him so that they are as close to face as possible. Do you remember what we talked about before the M-Man appeared? Naruto does his best to turn away, but it's hard because he's too weak. Why yeah. When Hinata sees his bewilderment, she swallows and reaches over to take his hand gently so as not to hurt him. Those visions, they're real. Hinata says, causing him to freeze and turn to face her. I'm from another time period, the same that why you dream about, she says. They're not nightmares. Hinata says, they're what H has yet to see come, the W war, Gaara, and Neji. She swallows and takes a breath, knowing that her cousin is still alive and well. IW was caught in ID don't know W what. With more tears streaming down her cheeks from the memory of Naruto hurting her or worse, Hinata tells him, I woke up in I don't know where, but it was white and all that was there was, why your arms. Hinata feels Naruto's hand suddenly grab hers, and she looks at him, seeing that he is totally focused on her, but she is unable to discern what emotion he is experiencing. This thing of W white light told me IW wasn't supposed to be there. Though it does seem more like a distant memory now, Hinata tells him, I was thrown from that world in W when I closed my eyes and opened them. I was 3 years old again. I went F from 15 to T3. She looks into his eyes and notices that he is still looking confused, but things seem to click in his mind. Processing this information, Naruto started, so, W what I'm dreaming, actually happened, or will happen. Feeling a little ashamed that she's discussing a topic that most people would consider insane, Hinata nods, swallows, looks him in the eyes, smiles slightly, and squeezes his hand. Yes, she says, I was a little confused. It's strange, I've spent, 18 years, Hinata remarked, recognizing the length of time she had known Naruto, if one counts knowledge of him. She couldn't help but smile as she grasped his hand, saying, it's very strange in my new life, in my old life, I used to always cry and give up, I made many wrong turns, but you helped me find the right path. I found it strange teaching you what you taught me, Hinata remarked, grinning as she reflected on all the lessons she had taught Naruto. I was saved by your smile. Hinata's heart rate rising, she grabbed Naruto's hand and drew confidence from it. And now I am by your side, training with you, and now that I have a second chance in life, I always wanted to tell you, she said. I love you, with her eyes wide with shock, Hinata whispers, W what? Unsure of whether she heard correctly. With a slight smile and a hint of redness on his cheeks, Naruto gazes at her. He looks away as he shifts slightly and rubs his face against his bedding, his ears now tinted red. Naruto shifts a little uncomfortably and tells her, I love you, with a hint of embarrassment in his voice. I felt this way I don't know. I just know. Hinata was expecting to confess her love, so she is shocked by Naruto's admission. As she examines her hands, she notices how flushed and dizzy she is. She swallows and clings to her conscious mind, trying not to pass out from embarrassment. As she gazes at him, she takes a deep breath in an attempt to regain her composure and avoid fainting. Naruto, I love you, Naruto simply lies there, straining his neck, a sign that he's attempting to move but that his efforts are failing due to his current lack of energy. Using all of her strength to avoid fainting from staring into his eyes, Hinata shifted weakly to the side he was facing and looked at him, unable to contain her laughter. Looking away and nervous, Naruto opens his mouth and says, I know, while thinking back and smiling shyly. You showed S signs, Naruto tells her, much to his surprise when he stammers, I asked say, Mum, and she told me that you might have a crush on me. When we talk, I just felt this feeling, you remind me of the angel that defended me from God. Naruto tells her, somewhat perplexed and surprised. With a flush and a great deal of confusion, Hinata whispers back, God? Angel? Naruto feels a little uneasy as he looks down at the ground. He describes his dreams, focusing on the god and the angel. Hinata deduced that he was observing the moment when pain pinned him and she attempted to rescue him. She made every effort to recall the meaning or nature of the dreams for him, but she was also perplexed by most of it. Similar to how power is consumed by black mass. The prophecy of the giant toad. He is struggling at a waterfall. He cried with joy and sorrow when he met a woman with red hair. Delivering a blow to the fourth Hokage. Sasuke had entered the room and was lying in bed, but Hinata and Naruto had been chatting the entire time, not even noticing the two of them. As the two discuss the future, or, in this case, the past life, Hinata lies on her side, staring at Naruto. Hinata simply lies down next to Naruto, feeling even more worn out than before. Naruto isn't entirely sure what to do, and the two are whispering about it. Hinata is limited in her knowledge of what can be altered, and she thinks it will be a few years before they arrive at a timeline that she, or rather, their knowledge, can follow. However, Hinata speculates that their alteration to this timeline may render it nearly impossible. Hinata merely looks at him with a slight smile. Whether it's for the better or worse, she is glad to be with Naruto and will do everything in her power to ensure that their future doesn't end the way it did. He nods as she says, and Naruto, I want us to make a be brighter future. Why yeah, Naruto answers, recalling the gloom that lies ahead and the anguish, sorrow, and resolve that will soon arise from those memories. Hinata smiles and giggles as Naruto says, we'll make a brighter future, believe it. XXXXXXX. There has been a long period of time. The majority of the injured and homeless villagers have been taken care of thanks to Team Kakashi. After completing the mission without any further problems, Team Kakashi returned to the village where they had left the survivors. The Tetsu clan had largely recovered, and when they could, Team Kakashi took the remaining members of the clan to the Leaf Village. In a quiet conversation, Naruto and Hinata filled in as many of Naruto's gaps as they could. That is challenging, though, because Naruto kept getting queasy when specific memories surfaced, almost as if he were attempting to relive a suppressed memory. The two decided to train for the future and improve upon their current state. Despite being a little worn out from training, Hinata intends to spend more time with Naruto outside of training because she wants to live the life she has always imagined with him. XXX. The old man at the Tsuchikage's office at the Earth Nation is looking at the paper reports with a very dejected expression. He glances up from the papers to see a shinobi dressed in his country's tattered shinobi uniform. His fear is evident on his face, and he appears extremely disappointed. With an embarrassed nod from the shinobi, the Tsuchikage sighs in frustration and asks, so you acted on wiping out the Tetsu clan, but you ended up losing Gari, Deidara, and the rest of the explosion corps? The Tsuchikage cries in agony as he hangs onto his back and rests on the arm of his chair. And you have the audacity to return? I told you to quit your squabbles with the Tetsu clan and you destroyed a large portion of the clan and the village. I warned you to let it go as the survivors fled. And you go and hunt my back. The stone shinobi drops his head as anxiety and fear surge through him. As the Tsuchikage recovers from his aching back, the shinobi looks up and says, I apologize for my people's actions and dishonoring you in such a way, Lord Tsuchikage. As he rubs his back, the Tsuchikage gives him a very irritated look and says, go now, I'll find a proper means to punish you later. The shinobi nods and quickly leaves. The old man, who appears somewhat disheartened at losing one of his students, prodigies, sighs in frustration and examines the documents. If there are any remnants of the explosion corpse, he ordered an investigation to find them. Since they were officially inside the Fire Nation's borders, he may need to take into account the possibility that the Leaf attacked their people if there is any indication of foul play. When he looks outside, he notices that the sky is broken, which worries him because none of his people who are scientifically inclined can determine what caused the sky to break. The only possible explanations are that an unearthly force caused it, that an ninjutsu was responsible, or that the end of the world is near. XXXXX in a different universe, the galaxy is exploding, and a number of ships are circling and studying space. A planet named Earth is surrounded by a number of enormous space stations. Cairo Station is the name of one of the stations. A number of the crew members observe the scars gradually growing larger, even as tiny shuttles approach them. They hover there, keeping a close eye on them while they scan everything they own. They are unable to identify what they are reading because the readings are out of the ordinary. Although scientists are unsure of its nature, they are certain that it was not caused in their universe. XXXXX as their long-range scanners pick up disturbances from several galaxies. A sizable fleet of Covenant ships drifts through space in another region of the galaxy, ready to launch. They have never scanned anything like that, and the disturbances are not natural. Even the images leave the event mysterious. Although none of the San-Shium are aware of its exact nature, they interpret it as a warning sign and think that the human race has done something. XXXXX in a different universe, the Earth, darkness, and rocks make up the majority of the landscape, which is dead. It appears that there are only a few active areas in the world, like tiny domes in some regions. The world hasn't seen the sun in a very long time, and the sky is covered in clouds. But now that things have changed, they can see yellowish-white light droplets visible through the clouds. There appear to be cracks, lines, or other irregularities in the light. The few outsiders observe in bewilderment and question whether the world is getting better. A small commune has been established at the foot of a dome called Rondo, and an old man who is completely bald and dressed in very worn-out clothing is gazing up at the sky. He glances at those of the commune and smiles a little. This is a sign that the world shall heal. It is healing and the sun shall shine upon us and Rondo shall open its doors to join us. An unsure-sounding citizen asks, "You sure about that, Hoodie?" Hoodie uses the occasion to give people a little more hope by exclaiming, "Of course it is." He smiles and says, "The sun itself is trying to break through the clouds. We shall see the sun first before anyone else." XXXXX a few dozen teenagers in a tiny camp that was constructed as a training ground stare in disbelief at the sky. As the scar continues to spread across the sky, it stops, and a number of people flee in fear. Though he displays less fear than the teenagers, a very dark-looking soldier near the center of the group is experiencing fear for the first time in years. A black-haired, gray-eyed teen twitches close to him as his hand involuntarily reaches out and seizes the arm of an oriental girl with long black hair and serious black eyes. She suppresses a blush as she looks at the boy, but for some reason, she is afraid of the sky shattering. "Eren, what's happening?" Though he clearly has no idea what it is, Eren maintains his composure and tells her, "Don't worry, Mikasa. Whatever it is, we'll live through it." XXXXX inside the vast forest and rocky landscape at the Fire Nation's boundaries. It is silent, and there is blood on the floor leading into a nearly hidden cave inside another nearby cave. Inside, a massive figure sits, resembling a stooped bear that ventured into a cave too small for it. It simply sits there motionless for a while before shifting, making metallic clanks and hitting the ground with something solid and metal. "Sorry, boss." "It's all right." A new voice emerges, revealing a figure that has moved deeper into the shadowed cavern and emerges, patting him and gaze. "I'm glad to see you're still alive, Dai." He checks on him. His back is severely burned, and some metal has melted into it. He sighs a little as he examines the wound and is shocked that Dai survived the massive explosion. The man lets out a small sigh and glances out the window, noticing the crack in the sky, and realizes that something is amiss. Soon after, he laughs and feels as though he has been given a fresh start. When the light enters the cave, it reveals a man in his late 40s wearing black armor akin to that of samurai and with his black hair tied back. His features, which are worn down by time and show both ambition and exhaustion, indicate that he has experienced many wars and horrors. He smirks. Having met Deidara in the original timeline, he had no idea that his and Day's time had ended days earlier. They would now live an unpredictable life in a modified timeline after dying from their weakened state. XXXXXXX. It has been a year since then. Many things have changed in the world, including the deterioration of the sky cracks and the adaptation of its inhabitants, but these changes have left the world with an unexplainable and dubious phenomenon. However, some have correctly deduced that something has changed in space and time. An economic downturn has been reversed in the Lightning Nation, and tensions have increased even further. The Tsuchikage believe the Fire Nation is to blame for the Earth Nation's isolation and multiple terrorist attacks from an unidentified enemy. Given that Deidara's remains were discovered with the chest cavity nearly vaporized, despite how decomposed it was, The elderly Tsuchikage even thinks that Deidara survived the initial explosion. There are rumors that a fourth shinobi war is imminent. XXX in the garden. Hinata is grinning while holding a small infant with midnight blue hair that is drooling and babbling as it tries to nurse on its own fist. Hinata kisses the side of her sister Hitomi's head while giggling at her new baby sister. The infant grins more, drooling on the sleeve of the tiny kimono and sucking her fist even harder. With compassion as he clings to her sister, Hinata sings softly, recalling her mother's singing to her. Looking to her left, she notices Naruto sleeping and grinning at her, which makes her laugh while singing, something out of the ordinary. As Hinata recalls that her breasts started to form, she has started to experience physical changes that she is half afraid of. Her nipples were sensitive, so she swore a little when it started. Now that the awkward binding was back, she enjoyed the 8 years she had been spared from having to deal with it. Hinata's hair has grown slightly longer, but she's taking care to keep it from getting too long because Naruto said she looked cuter with short hair. She is still wearing a lavender t-shirt instead of her typical cream-colored jacket. She glances over and sees Hanabi listening as well, checking the garden for weeds, but Hinata knew she enjoyed the song. Naruto looks a little different. When he stands up, his long, spiky hair nearly covers his eyes. Even though he is aware of what the nightmares are, they continue to drive his emotions, which is why his eyes are nearly lifeless. When he sees Hinata and spends time with people he truly cares about, he does exhibit more vitality in his eyes. However, Hinata has seen him when he was not looking, and if she hadn't known better, he was clinically depressed. He is dressed in the same clothes he wore at this time in his life, but the collar, sleeves, and sides of his pants are all a mix of black. Naruto stands up and approaches Hinata after sitting up and stretching. Gazing at Hitomi, Naruto smiles and inserts his finger into her hand. Naruto asks, a little uneasy at the prospect, so, the first major mission is coming up. You think we'll get it? Do you think we'll be ready? As she looks at him and rocks her baby sister gently, Hinata smiles and says, don't worry, Naruto. We've been training and planning for this. She gets a strained smile in return. She stops grinning and appears slightly dejected since she can tell it's a fake smile, and he is aware of this. As he slowly sinks to the ground by her side, Naruto says, I'm sorry, Hinata. He reaches for the back of his head and rubs it in frustration. The nightmares are getting worse, and Mum's been teaching more on medical ninjutsu and that's been a lot of stress. I'm nervous and the lack of sleep, it's getting to me. Hinata gives him a dejected glance as she carefully lowers herself to his level while clinging to her younger sister, who is still nursing on her own sleeve. Hinata rests her sister on her knees while holding her with one arm. Her thumb touches his mark on the palm of his hand as his left arm entwines with his right, and she rests her head on his shoulder. She started, but Naruto instead leaned forward and turned to face her. And Naruto, I am here to support you. You are so much stronger than me. We can achieve anything. YUS saved us so many lives, including mine. She said. Hinata, you're better than I ever was, or ever will be. Naruto tells her, looking her in the eyes solemnly, as Hinata looks at him and wonders what happened. As Naruto looks down and recalls the haze of killing that teenager a year ago, he says, you did all of this and you'll do so much more, all I did. He has some visions of it that make him physically ill, but he doesn't fully remember it. Naruto looks up at her and says, you're the person that can change the future and I'm going to support you. His lips move up, revealing a sincere smile. Hinata's breathing deepens and slows as she lowers her head. Now that he sees a teardrop fall from her eye, Naruto appears perplexed and becomes a little alarmed. As Hinata sobs into his arm and Hitomi looks perplexed by the sudden abundance of orange and dark hues, he swiftly puts her arms around her and apologizes multiple times. Naruto praising her in this way surprised Hinata, who sobs into his arm. She always followed him, but now that he appears to be following her, she thought he was strong and self-assured, but he appears to be stronger and more self-assured when he sees her. While holding her, Naruto feels like crying too, but he is unable to find the tears. As he holds her close and takes deep breaths, he whispers that he didn't mean to upset her and begs her to stop crying. You're the hero, she mouths while still sobbing. Both have feelings and admiration for the other, and they both think that the other is the one who can save the world. After a few moments, Hinata is able to say, it's alright and Naruto, while holding him a little closer and stroking his jacket with her eyes. She leans in to give him a cheek kiss. She whispers, you only made me happy, and gives him a hug. Awkwardly, Hanabi observes the scene before moving slowly forward and removing Hitomi from Hinata's lap. The two are left there to embrace after she carries her away, Though she's too young to understand how it works, she knows the two have feelings for one another, which she finds disgusting, but she doesn't know what's going on. XXXXXA meeting is taking place several hundred miles away in a building under Akatsuki control. As a Hulk-like entity enters the building, Itachi, Kisame, and Sasori wait outside the exit. The floorboards bend under the weight of the 7-foot-tall Hulk, which is concealed by a tarp that serves as a cloak. Since the guy they're waiting for wasn't described as being this tall or constructed like a brick shithouse, Kisame examines the other two and questions whether they invited the right man. Sasori confronts him years ago and asks, "You're Hitoshi Tetsu?" But the physical appearance doesn't fit his memory. A deep, perplexed voice emerges from the cloak. Another voice says, "I am." A much smaller figure emerges from the back of the tarp cloak, revealing a man with a wizened face, long black hair, and traditional black armor. "You wish me to join your organization?" Hitoshi asks, glancing at the three and recognizing them from the bingo books as he passes in front of the Akatsuki members. Looking between the two men, Sasori gives him a serious look and says, "Yes, though the position is only for one. This is Dai, he's just a weapon at my disposal. I just relax in the small of his back while he takes on those not worthy of my time," Hitoshi says, laughing and patting the bigger man. "How do we know what you're capable of, seeing as you use that Goliath of a man to do your dirty work?" Kisame asks, laughing, as he turns to face Hitoshi. Hitoshi simply looks at him, extending his arm while glancing at Dai. Glancing back, Dai extends his arm to Hitoshi. With little effort and at a startling speed, the man seizes Dai and swiftly swings him around like a gigantic hammer before launching it at the three Akatsuki members, narrowly avoiding collision. Hitoshi watches the three as they land close by while Kisame laughs in amusement as the wall behind them is vaporized. Sasori glares at him and says, "Don't do that, that is your first and only warning." Hitoshi merely smirks in response. Hitoshi smirks slightly as the three men tell him, "So what do you want with me? And what does Akatsuki have to offer?" XXXXX as they seek to shield one another from the terrifying future, Naruto and Hinata keep holding on to one another, finding solace in one another. Hinata presses her forehead against his neck after rubbing her eyes against his shoulder. He holds her while grinning. She slowly turns her head and, to his surprise, her lips meet his, and he recoils. She gives him a slightly perplexed look before grinning in embarrassment. Sorry, Naruto. I forget that I'm technically T23. And you haven't been T though the T time travel fully, and still T technically a C child." After giving her a quick laugh, Naruto kisses her forehead and says, "Well, I'll say the dreams count, so I'm 23 as well." She blushes as Naruto gives her another kiss on the lips. Naruto breaks the kiss when he hears a voice behind them and turns to face a rather irate Neji. Lady Hinata is too young for rambunctious acts to the heir of the clan. This is a warning. If you do so again, I shall show you the wrath of her father, Lord Heishi, should he find out. He warns him, with his Byakugan half active. Naruto removes his hands from Hinata's side and smiles in embarrassment and fear. Conversely, Hinata confidently moves forward and looks at Neji. Hinata surprises both Neji and Naruto by warning him, "I am the one that instigated the kiss, Neji. And if you were to inform father, I shall show you what I am capable of." Both of them feel a little uneasy about this because it is not typical of her. Neji tells her, bowing, I apologize, Lady Hinata." He then slowly straightens up. And, "Lady Hinata, a messenger came and you're going back on missions. Arrive at the Hokage's tower for said assignments." Hinata and Naruto nod in agreement. As Neji starts to leave, Hinata smiles and asks, "How's your teammates?" She is interested in talking to her cousin because they haven't spent much time together. When Neji sees her kindness and realizes she wants to spend time with him, he turns to face her and smiles a little. As he bows once more before departing, Neji says, "They're fine, Lady Hinata. Lee continues to train and Tenten would like to hang out with you sometime in the near future." She smiles. Hinata blushes a little as Naruto laughs and takes her hand. "Do you think we should try and tell people about the future?" Naruto asks, and Hinata lets out a little sigh, but it's more out of contentment than annoyance. Naruto, it'll be difficult to explain. Most would think we're insane and we would see cause more rapid changes that we can't anticipate. I would like to tell some, but we have to show an S sign of proof to be T taken seriously, and we'll need to trust T they'll do what's best. What about Kakashi or old man Hokage? Naruto asks with a smile as he nods and looks at her. With a smile, Hinata squeezes his hand and says, maybe, should we find proof? She blushes as Naruto nods and smiles at her, kissing the side of her head. We will, believe it. XXX sitting in his apartment, Sasuke examines some scrolls that were given to him by his two sensei as training aids. There is no indication of interest or boredom in his eyes. He merely lets out a sigh before hurling the scroll across the room and hitting the adjacent table with his fist. Sasuke screams, "Why the fuck is this happening?" and snatches the table, hurling it across the room and smashing it against the wall. He approaches the wall and slams his fist into it. He has witnessed Naruto and Hinata acquire powers with ease, while he is not making as much progress as they are. He grasps his head in frustration, knowing that he is no closer to defeating Itachi, and has been experiencing visions and nightmares of some strange world. XXXXX in the universe where time and space have been restored, the entity keeps destroying what it is supposed to fix, and its body suffers with every change. The cracks in its universe are exactly the same as those in every other universe. The majority of the debris entering the entity's universe comes from the original timeline from which Hinata originated, but the entity has been ignoring it. Plants, rocks, even tree parts and limbs floating into emptiness. A big rock floats close by and then drifts away, revealing the top half of a black-haired human being and the remnants of a gray shirt. A black mass appears to be moving around the severed area and appears to be vibrating from some source. Sasuke Uchiha is seen as the body slowly rotates, his eyes wide as something prevents him from passing away. Sasuke's arms cannot move because of the black mass that clings to him. He looks around, but the black mass remains near his severed area, and all he sees are cracks and debris in the white universe. As it clings to him and ignores the outside world, the black mass tells him, "You stopped Mother's return. You're going to suffer for that." It has no idea that its connection to the bodies and limbs in this universe is connecting to the era the entity is attempting to enter, resulting in visions of their origins due to the weak and dissolving barrier. Naruto and his group are in front of the Hokage. Since he has been keeping track of the days and thinks the bridge builder will arrive in a month or two, Naruto swallows nervously. That wasn't his strong suit, so he can't recall the exact day. Naruto has only slept for a maximum of 10 hours over the past week and yawns from the restless days. Beside him, Hinata extends her hand and grasps Naruto's hand. As they wait for the Hokage to sort through their new mission, he flinches a little, looks down, and smiles at Hinata. He then takes her hand. While Samui reviews the new line of missions, Kakashi reviews the logs of the missions they have completed. Sasuke observes from a distance, his eyes narrowed as he gazes out the window, his thoughts elsewhere. Right, the Hokage started looking at the assignments and looked at his companions. There's a few missions for you to choose from. All C rank. There's an escort mission for a merchant to the village hidden in the sand. A package that is to be delivered to a small island nation known as the Salt Nation. Assisting rebuilding fortifications on an outpost near the borders. And finally, escorting a merchant to a small trading village half a day from the village. Anyone you wish to pick? Asks Kakashi, turning to face the team and noticing Naruto's mild interest. Sand Village, asks Naruto, who sounds a little uneasy. Sasuke shrugs, unconcerned, and Hinata nods in agreement. Taking the scroll, Kakashi says, "Sand Village it is." He then goes to meet the individual. The group departs and makes their way down the hallway in search of the appropriate room. With a slight yawn, Naruto passes an open door and, after a fleeting glance, notices a woman with black hair and a bandaged arm who appears to be somewhat familiar. He keeps walking and then stops suddenly after a few seconds. When Hinata senses Naruto stopping and grabbing her arm, she stops abruptly, looks back in confusion, and Naruto releases her hand before turning to leave. Hinata dials, and Naruto, but receives no answer. When Naruto first enters, he notices that the woman is clearly upset about something. Confusion sets in as Naruto examines her closely. "Tsunami," he murmurs, identifying her as Inari's mother and Tezuna's daughter. "Why yes? Am I being called in to see the Hokage?" Tsunami asks, clutching Naruto's arm as she looks around and jumps a little. She has nearly lifeless eyes, and Naruto just stares at them while he tries to hide the sadness and depression that he has only ever seen in his and Sasuke's eyes. Naruto tells her, no, and enters the room. "Why, what happened to you?" he asks, perplexed as to why she is there. "I am here to ask for help for my nation. I'm one of a few willing to do something. Justice needs to be," Tsunami said, looking down and taking deep breaths to keep herself from crying. She coughed a little and covered her eyes with her good hand. Looking at her, still bewildered, Naruto notices some flesh on her injured arm close to the bandaged bindings. He could tell it was some sort of burn, but it wasn't seared. Rather, it was almost evenly spaced. Similar ones, primarily of lightning users, have appeared in his future visions. This further perplexes Naruto, who recalls that Gato only had goons with the ability to swing a weapon, while Zabuza and Haku possessed no lightning jutsu at all. I'm, murmurs Naruto, uncertain of what has transpired with her or her homeland. When Hinata sees Naruto standing there, she calls out, "Naruto," and can tell he's upset about something. Walking beside him, she notices the woman and realizes she is in pain. Her eyes bring back memories of the day she looked in the mirror following her mother's death in a past life. Hinata asks the two of them, Are you okay?" because she wants to know who this woman is. Naruto simply stares at Hinata, his bewilderment and slight fear visible in his eyes. The woman shakes her head, as Hinata observes. Concerned that the woman is to blame for Naruto's emotions, Hinata takes Naruto's hand and listens to her. With tears streaming down her cheek, Tsunami tells them, "I've just had a horrible year." She also takes deep breaths and tells him, "I'm going to ask T the Leaf T to take the mission. Our country needs it, so desperately." Because of what transpired at the Wave Nation, Naruto is nervous and concerned. On the other hand, Hinata moves forward, lets go of Naruto's hand, and takes hers. She exudes a reassuring aura that Tsunami voluntarily accepts because she is in such need of human interaction. Tsunami then holds Hinata and sobs into her shoulder, which is the ideal height for her. Since she didn't know the woman, Hinata feels a little uncomfortable, but she gives her a hug in return, feeling her collar quickly get wet. The mood didn't change for a few seconds until someone knocked on the door almost silently and said, "Tsunami? The council are here to hear of your request." A Chunin is standing there when Naruto turns. Naruto nods and murmurs in Hinata's ear, and she releases Tsunami gradually as well. Tsunami thanks Hinata for lending her a shoulder to weep on as she slowly gets to her feet while rubbing her eyes. As she leaves, Naruto follows, curious to find out what happened and why she is here. As Tsunami enters, a shinobi shakes his head and extends his hand. The man shuts the door as Naruto and Hinata start to leave. As he listens through the door, Naruto takes Hinata's hand and begins yanking her back. In order to avoid triggering her chakra, Hinata listens through as well, looking at him and shrugging. XXX Tsunami is standing there, observing the designated shinobi and elders. She still had tears in her eyes from just a short while ago. After whispering to a shinobi guard, the third Hokage hands him a handkerchief, which he then hands to Tsunami. Tsunami sobs into it for a few seconds before gathering her thoughts. Tsunami starts off by saying, I am here to make a request. The Wave Nation is being destroyed by, but as she thinks about that man, her sadness transforms into rage. Gato, she whispers angrily, her hatred evident, and the council can only hear it. The Hokage asks, a little taken aback, Gato? The man that owns Gato Company? The shipping industry? And so on. That man has ruined our country. He has raped, pillaged, and has all but destroyed my country. He has done so for too long, and if this doesn't stop, Tsunami starts, but is stopped by fear. She nods, her teeth grinding, then remembers and starts crying again. Tsunami practically screams at them, tears streaming down her face. She swallows, takes a breath, and uses all her strength to say, they have killed several dozen people in our country, including my father, who began building a bridge to remove Gato's hold on our country. They took many other people's family and children as prisoners. They're pushing us down, they're pushing us down, they're pushing us down, and they're making sure we know we have no hope. Your nation caused it. Although her story moved him, the Hokage, like the rest of the council, is perplexed by her last statement. How are we exactly the cause of it? He asks. Gato tried to hire shinobi before, but he could only get rogue ninja. We had hope. Now the Lightning Country has joined Gato Company. They're fighting for that bastard. They're killing us and want the country so they have a base next to your nation. We know, and I only got away from that place. This is the cause of my bravery. She weeps, removes the bandages, and reveals serious wounds on her left arm. She could barely move her severely burned arm due to dried blood cracking between the ruined skin. She sobs because of the pain, but the anguish in her heart is more intense than any physical harm. Tsunami cries and falls to her knees, clutching her injured arm as two shinobi go to rebandage it. We're going to die if you don't do anything. I can't go back without, she says. The Hokage looks at the others and whispers to them, looking surprised. Whispering to one of the shinobi, he receives a nod before vanishing in a puff of smoke. The Hokage tries to reply but fails. He sighs sorrowfully and ponders for a few seconds. He whispers, "Tsunami, what you ask for, this could cause a war," and she looks up, fear in her eyes, listening to his answer. Kaharu responds, "Hiruzen, the lightning shinobi are on our borders and killing our allies, perhaps even uniting the smaller nations against us. Tell me, child, what has come of Lord Yagami, the lord of the Wave Nation?" she asks. After staring at her in confusion for a few moments, Tsunami muses, Lord Yagami. He died 5 years ago." Looking at Hiruzen and the others, Kaharu says, "I thought Danzo or someone would have told us of any lord's death. Especially since Danzo was the one to elect him in the first place." He appears somewhat surprised. Looking at her closely, Homura says, "Indeed, so who was leading the country before Gato took control with the help of the lightning shinobi?" Tsunami looks at him, confused and irritated. What does that have to do with anything? The lord and his firstborn son was killed in an ambush by Gato and the lightning ninja. They killed dozens of people to prove a point. She screams, standing up and glares at them, "The Wave Nation is your ally. You caused our suffering, and if you're worried about payment, we'll give you what we have and you can take the country yourself. I don't want to see another child die." She screams at them, tears running down her face, soon falling to her knees and bows before them. Please, you have to do something. If you don't, we'll die. Not just the people. Everything the Wave country used to be. Please, she asks, tears running down her cheeks which starts to stain the floor. The council's eyes widen as the doors open and they see Danzo standing there with Naruto in his grasp and Hinata in the hands of one of his followers. A couple more rude Anbu enter after Danzo warns the Hokage, "You best be wary on who listens in on your conversations, Hiruzen." The Hokage looks at the two genin with disappointment and asks, "What do you want, Danzo?" Danzo dismisses the Hokage's order to escort them out of this meeting. Hinata is going to be learning this stuff from the future. As for the boy, he's already heard a lot, and didn't you say he is highly skilled? He managed to hide from you to hear. Danzo tells the Hokage, grinning slightly, he might even be legible for root. The Hokage glares at him and laughs. "I am here to give my assistance, Hiruzen. And it just came to me that Lord Yagami died 10 years ago. I have been receiving information from the Wave, personally from the Lord, but it seems that the Lord knew of my arrangement and pulled a fast one on me for this long. It would be an insult to not know who done it for so long." Danzo releases Naruto, causing him to complain in some pain. The Hokage gives him a perplexed look, but he swallows nervously and says, "You know this, Danzo, that doing this mission will probably start a war." Kaharu looks at the Hokage with annoyance. "We're already at war. The Lightning Nation has invaded an allied country. They're severely weakened, and if we allow them to get a foothold there, and with the wealth Gato Company has, they'll be more dangerous." Homura smiles as he says, "If they're not stopped now, then what's to stop them from attacking our nation with God knows what? We'll lose more than a country. We've been suffering greatly from the Earth Nation's hostile acts towards our allies, and we know only a few nations allied to us are remaining allied with the Lightning Nation." Danzo responds, "Well, in that department, we have been showing signs of weakness by accepting those Lightning citizens and allowing the Lightning Nation to act hostile in such a way to risk our allies. There's even been several cases of missing ninja from our place, and I don't mean they've gone rogue. From my informants, most of them appear to be caused by lightning forces." Looking at Danzo, both Naruto and Hinata are perplexed and question whether this indicates that people who weren't supposed to die actually did. As she swallows, Hinata's mind is racing and she starts to wonder how many people have died since she prevented her kidnapping. She shakes her head, clearing her mind of the negative. Neji and her friend are content and have benefited so many people that she is unable to consider the drawbacks. The Hokage looks at them and observes that they have come to terms with the fact that we are still talking about risking a war to break out. Even though the majority of them appear afraid, he knows they won't disagree, so he looks at them all in the hopes of getting some kind of objection. Naruto yells, "I have to go," louder than he should have, causing people to jump and turn to face him. When Homura says, "Out of the question," he receives multiple nods, and Naruto mutters obscenities. As he steps forward and looks at them, Naruto exclaims, "I have to go." His mind is racing as he tries to persuade them, "I have to learn to fight, to survive," and Naruto tells them, perplexed because he can tell none of them would permit it. He snarls a little and closes his eyes, knowing that he must take action to stop the nightmares. Though the circumstances raise doubts about whether anything from the past will occur now, they have gotten worse and he has witnessed things he hopes will never happen. "I am Naruto Uzumaki. I'm going to be the future Hokage and I have trained for basically my entire life. You agreed to make me graduate early. I may be a genin, but you can't discredit my capabilities. This may cause a war, so your war is my war. After a few moments of silence, Tsunami asks, "And Naruto, Uzumaki?" and looks at him bewildered. "F from the clan Uzumaki?" she asks, capturing his and almost the entire room's attention. Are you related to Tadao Uzumaki?" she asks. As the others glance between the two, Naruto gives her a strange look. "No, I've never heard of Tadao. Why, Uzumaki? What's going on?" Naruto asks, completely perplexed. He glances at the Hokage and then back at her, searching for someone to answer, but almost everyone in the room is perplexed. While giving him a close look, Tsunami tells him, "The Lord of the Wave, the new lord was Tadao Uzumaki. You don't have the red hair." She shakes her head. As he looks at her, Naruto becomes confused and gets a white noise migraine. With visions striking him and his brain screaming, Naruto grips his head. He is standing in a white world with nothing sitting in it when he suddenly faces a red-haired beauty who is nearly as tall as him and has moving lips. As her words are ignored and Naruto feels his legs give way, he feels tears streaming down his face from both pain and what seems to be joy. It appears as though a poor video recording abruptly cut to the mission room when Naruto sees his vision sketch. The noise subsides as Naruto holds onto his head, but he can still feel a warm, moist material dripping from his face. When Naruto senses someone holding him up, he turns to see Hinata clutching him and displaying concern. As Naruto looks around, he notices that everyone is staring at him bewildered. As Naruto looks down and breathes, he soon sees blood spilling onto the ground. Knowing that the blood is coming from his nose, Naruto reaches for his face and rubs it. He then looks at his hand and notices blood-stained tears. When he looks at Hinata's hand, he sees a handkerchief that is entirely white. Naruto accepts it with a small smile and wipes the tears and blood from his face. Looking at him anxiously, the Hokage asks, "Naruto, are you alright?" Naruto tells him, slowly glancing at Tsunami and then back at the Hokage, "Yeah, just a sudden migraine." Tsunami, she just said their leader is Tadao Uzumaki. Is he my family? Or someone that knew my mother? The others stare at Naruto for a moment, some of them incredulous. Danzo looks at the boy and asks, "Your mother?" After blurting out his mother, Naruto looks around, a little bewildered. He blinks a few times, recalling some dreams in which he cried when he saw a stunning woman with red hair. Naruto starts to question if he knew it was his mother or something else in his subconscious. Naruto tries to maintain his focus while shaking his head. Naruto looks down and muses, "There is a person who shares my name. I have every right to go there." He wonders if the other Uzumaki was there previously or if time has changed. "He's just a genin, he's inexperienced, don't make demands of us, boy, it's too dangerous." "Okay Naruto," were some of the loud voices protesting this, with varying degrees of yelling. At the last response, Naruto looks up abruptly and notices the Hokage standing there with a faint smile on his face. After verifying what Naruto had heard, he replies, "Okay Naruto. But, you're not going to participate in the actual assault. You're to gather information by eavesdropping or talking with the locals." There are numerous shouts of disagreement, and some people even stand up and get red in the face. Waving them away, Hiruzen moves forward and kneels in front of Tsunami, grinning sorrowfully while staring into her eyes. Even though the mission didn't agree with him, he nods in agreement. He was aware that many people would perish if they weren't stopped. The lightning shinobi will attack them or more of their allies will die if they don't drive them off their territories. Hiruzen clings to Tsunami as she sobs more and puts her arms around him, understanding her anguish because he considers every death in the village to be his family. Naruto glances around and notices that a few council members don't agree with him. Hinata is holding Naruto's arm motionless as he looks at her and realizes that she is also observing the argument and is visibly anxious. Naruto comforts her by holding onto her hand and saying, "It's going to be alright." XXXXXXX. After a few days, the Hokage summoned Naruto's team and a number of other highly skilled teams back. In order to keep the chaos to a minimum, Naruto does think that a number of Anbu are also participating in this mission. Despite having heard about the potential Uzumaki clan survivors in the Wave Country, Kakashi and Samui are a little taken aback that they are embarking on the mission. Sasuke's face only displays hatred, but he is feeling a little excited about embarking on a risky mission. Naruto scans the area and recognizes a number of individuals, including Ebisu and members of other clans. They recently learned of the Lightning Nation's invasion, their alliance with Gato, and the potential hiring of rogue ninjas. They are only able to estimate the number of enemies, and they will welcome any assistance from allies who are prepared to help them thwart the Lightning's invasion plans. A few nations joined the Fire Nation in its predicament. When Naruto looks around, he sees those from the Hidden Waterfall Village, the Hidden Sand Village, and the Hidden Grass Village. Naruto looks around the sand, but he doesn't see anyone he knows. After a few moments, he unexpectedly sees Fumio, the Tetsu clan member who was hurt long ago. Fumio is standing there with his right arm and part of his leg gone. He is leaning on a cane, and the right side of his face is covered by bandages and a headband bearing the Tetsu clan symbol, which Naruto assumes is the scientific or alchemical equivalent. As the Hokage tells everyone that Fumio will be a tactical advisor because he has battled the Lightning Shinobi for many years, Naruto thinks to himself that he should read more, but that slowly fades from his mind. Knowing that Hinata is anxious, Naruto feels someone clench his hand while he looks and smiles at her. Because he is also anxious, no, afraid, he puts on a brace face. Although Naruto and Hinata are aware of what ought to have occurred, this is more than they have ever done. Even though Hinata felt anxious and guilty about the possibility of another shinobi war, she hopes for the best for everyone. She sits up and takes a deep breath. She wants to kill as few people as possible, so she has all the plans she can think of to make that happen. XXXXXXX. A few days have gone by since they set up travel plans, provided equipment, and assigned specialized teams to handle particular tasks. Naruto's group was already well known for obtaining information by pretending to be orphans or beggars. Naruto kept experiencing headaches and flashbacks of an ambush that Sasuke managed to thwart while they were traveling with Tsunami, but it hasn't happened yet. Naruto pretends to be a beggar child by scratching at his new attire. They have successfully crossed the ocean and are boarding a number of boats that are typically used to bring in immigrants, primarily former citizens of Lightning. When Naruto notices their boat approaching, he grabs his bag, grabs Hinata's hand, and leaps on board, followed by Hinata. Holding his belongings, Kakashi approached and assisted Tsunami in boarding the boat. Sasuke is the last person to step on, staring at nothing and displaying no signs of interest despite being just as nervous as Naruto and Hinata. Samui only has a small sack instead of a large one. The boatman sets out, returning to the main city, or what was once the main city, of the Wave Nation. Between his base and the estate of the former Lord of the Wave, Gato had constructed a temporary town for his mercenaries. According to reports, Gato's mercenary camp is bigger, more repulsive, and more corrupt than a daimyo's dairy. Naruto sits on the boat's edge for a few minutes, scanning the area as the mist obscures his vision. The outlines of the other teams on the other boats, all posing as immigrants to gain entry, are visible to the team. Kakashi coughs as he opens his bag to take a tiny container prior to giving it to Hinata. You'll need to wear these, though we have been trained to disguise ourselves with transformation jutsu. There can be trained shinobi that have been trained specifically can detect the chakra requiring to make it. We have to make sure we don't give any hints and get a handle to the situation before we strike. Though I expect you to do as we've been tasked and act as street urchins to get what little information that is to be expected. Hinata, you'll need these contacts. Naruto, you'll need makeup to cover your marks. They're strong indication of a chakra gene pool in you, just like the Akamichi and Inuzuka clans. Samui pushes his hands aside and spreads the substance evenly, but Naruto nods as he rubs on it. Since she has never done this before and her eyes aren't used to it, Hinata twitches as she takes the contact lenses out of the container and covers them. She turns to face Naruto, who gives her a strange look and chuckles a little before telling her, "You look weird with green eyes." Hinata looks down and feels her eyes burning a little from the contacts as she blushes and blinks a few times. When Naruto notices the tears in her eyes, he becomes alarmed and keeps apologizing, thinking he has just offended her. After a moment of confusion, Hinata realizes that the contacts are causing her to cry and tells him, blushing even more, "No Naruto, it's the contacts lenses." When Naruto realizes, he also flushes, rubs his neck, and swallows uneasily. With a small laugh, Naruto takes her hand and holds it tenderly. Naruto whispers, "Okay," and strokes her hand. Everyone turns to face a big building in the distance as Samui asks, "Is that the bridge?" When Naruto sees the previous image of the bridge, his left eye twitches and a nose runs down his upper lip, but it's incorrect. It's not even a quarter of the way done. Out of pain, Naruto lets go of Hinata's hand and grasps his head as a number of images flash through his mind, primarily from his previous life, but they are so jumbled that they hardly make sense. Hinata grabs his arm, holds it, and tries to calm his mind as his body stiffens and nearly erupts. After making sure Naruto didn't fall off, Kakashi holds him and watches him slowly get better. Be careful. Take deep breaths. We're being watched. Kakashi murmurs as he looks at the edge of the bridge and notices a team there. He sees what he thinks is another ninja with his trained eyes, but it disappears. They soon arrive at the docks, where some of them exhale with relief as they quickly make their way ashore to meet up locations and to separate in order to allay suspicions. Samui, posing as mother and son, approaches Naruto as his boat docks and gestures for him to follow her. Kakashi gets to his feet, his mouth and left eye covered, and his hair wrapped in bandages. He pretends to be hurt as he leans on a big branch and grabs it. He is led to the streets by Sasuke and Hinata, who both play the role of his children. Kakashi and Sasuke notice something. A woman with multiple scars on her face and body is holding a young boy with short, red hair. The hair reminds Kakashi of Kushina's, which makes him a little perplexed, but he dismisses it when he hears the two hop onto a boat and start to row away. The team is shocked by how bare the streets are. They can tell that the few people outside are Gado's employees because they are armed with weapons and that at least one of them is a ninja. Samui doesn't want to take the chance of being recognized by anyone from the Lightning Nation, so he and Naruto swiftly move in the opposite direction. XXXXX, a massive figure leans against a chair in the barracks of Gado's headquarters deep within the Wave Nation, a gigantic sword resting on his arm. As a number of footsteps march up and down the hallway, either leaving the building or making their way to the cell block, he looks off into space. A couple of rogue mist shinobi enter through the open door and begin to rest in their bunks. Zabuza. He doesn't respond, but a voice behind him says, "Zabuza, I think we're needed to help put down the rebels once again." He nods and gets to his feet. Zabuza remarks, always getting orders, and turns to face Haku, who is accompanied by 3 other rogue mist shinobi under his command. "Think we should bring Kaiju to deal with the rabble?" Zabuza asks. The 3 renegade shinobi exchange anxious glances as Haku bows his head and says, "You've already made up your mind, Zabuza." This makes him laugh. After leaving the room, Zabuza descends the stairs and passes by a number of cells on his way to the cell blocks. Captured and tortured rebels are kept in each cell. A fancier-looking cell with multiple ceiling tags is passed by Zabuza. It depicts a man, or at least the appearance of a man, sitting in the middle of the space with his head surrounded by bandages and his body covered in several of them. His hair is pure red. When Zabuza gets to the cell next to his, he just waves. Zabuza looks up and sees a giant of a man, if that's what it is. He opens the cell and asks, "Kaiju? Are you ready to stop some rebels again?" A giant, metallic hand slams onto the floor, leaving claw marks and scratching slightly as the fist pulls the behemoth out as the door flies off. It is as tall as it can go, nearly 10 feet, but it is still stooped and doesn't take up much of the small hallway. The giant's face is mostly hidden by a metallic mask that resembles a gas mask, and his eyes are shielded by black goggles. Only his forehead, which bears the mist symbol, is exposed. His enormous, robotic arms reach below his knees and resemble those of a bodybuilder. His large torso is encircled by a metallic chest plate that connects to the mask and arms. Zabuza knew that this creature was human, and he was one of the few people who could control him, or, perhaps more accurately, the last person to do so. For years, he was aware of this phenomenon, which is appropriately referred to as the blood mist tank of the mist. Zabuza turns, and the giant follows him out the door, saying, "Come Kaiju, let's get paid." It wasn't even half a day before Naruto started to struggle. He almost passed out from a seizure or a bad migraine at every sight of a familiar face or sudden flashback. However, Samui has capitalized on that and contributed to the 6th Street urchin. She threw him close to one of the few active shopping centers so he could listen and observe. She assumed her role before disappearing into the alleys. A trickle of blood runs down Naruto's nose as he holds his pounding head. When he looks up, he sees people who are close to him crossing over and appearing worse and more depressed than he could have ever imagined or even experienced. For a brief moment, Naruto reflects on his past, recalling the loneliness and hatred he felt toward people who either ignored him or despised him simply for existing. These individuals appeared to have dyed their hatred along with hope, compassion, and any other good emotion that a human being could experience. As they starve, get kicked, and die like caged animals, Naruto feels both sympathy and sadness for them. He sees their lifeless eyes, devoid of ambition or hope. Naruto observes them go by, their melancholy lingering like a sickness that infects others. Even the migraines and seizures couldn't make Naruto feel any worse. Even though he never met them, he grieves for them and his grandson, as well as the old bridge builder from his former life. Despite having learned about Kami and all facets of life from his foster mother Sayla, he has never truly prayed before. Even though Naruto has never met the man, he was the one who made Inari happy, and now he feels compelled to pray for Tsunami and Kaiza to find peace of mind. Naruto hears footsteps that are quiet. His eyes widen in astonishment as he recognizes the couple of people who pass him when he looks up. As if nothing in this town could or would hurt them, the two rogue mist ninja who had attacked his team in their previous life were strolling down the street. They are followed in the same way by a smaller figure than the other two, who are both wearing similar outfits and the demon brothers' smaller pair of weaponized gauntlets. Naruto tilts his head and recalls no smaller version of the pair from the previous scene, but every time he tries to recall, a sharp pain shoots through him. In order to tell his team leader that the demon brothers and an unidentified person are among them, Naruto makes himself memorize them. He sincerely hopes that Zabuza can be connected to them through some pre-linked information. He doesn't want to risk losing any allies or leaving that information too late. Naruto swallows, wondering if Zabuza and Gato are still connected now that so much has changed. Regardless of whether he provides the information and is correct or incorrect, his mind begins to race. Lack of information is worse than having it. Naruto chooses to stick to what he knows rather than provide details about something that might or might not be true. He holds his head, shakes it slightly, and takes a few breaths. Naruto keeps listening and pleading while keeping an eye on the street. Other than mercenaries and lightning ninja acting haughtily, he doesn't see much. XXX Samui listens to the few conversations she can overhear outside a tavern without raising any red flags. She watches those passing by while taking slow, side-to-side steps, keeping her hands behind her back, and dressing in more skimpy attire. When Gato's people occasionally enter the tavern, the conversation seems to be limited to disdain and grumbling about the terrible state of affairs and the silence. As she looks around the bar, she notices that maybe 6 or 7 people are attempting to get wasted but lack the funds. Others did have enough, but their moods were clearly depressed. She has probably counted 4 or 5 of Gato's people causing trouble and drinking their drinks. She recognizes 2 of them and is disgusted because they used to be decent men. A rough voice says, "Wow, those tits are bigger than any own head." As Samui looks, she notices 2 men wearing bandanas bearing Gato's logo and weapons strapped to their sides. Samui smiles at the 2, who are clearly not clean or shaven in a long time. "Yeah," the second one replies, grinning and imagining that he could die contented after burying his head in them. "How much?" he asks, his voice full of lust. "How much you got?" Samui asks, her voice lighter and her arms slightly pressing against her breasts as she smiles at the 2. She may have received training in this, but having to adopt a persona that contradicted everything she did in life sickened her. "You best feel grateful. We could just throw you in that alley and take you however we want," the first man says, his tone threateningly close to hostility because they didn't have that much. The 2 men's eyes come to life and they immediately begin scavenging everything they have and presenting it to her. "Show us a night to remember, and we may very well come back with food and milk to keep those jugs up." They chuckle heartily as they follow her after Samui nods and gestures for them to do so. A few moments later, as they continue to move deeper into the town, the 2 men gaze at the woman's exquisitely curved butt. She pauses for a second before slamming her fists into their privates. Before Samui's arms leap forward and fly back, slamming into their faces, both lurch forward in agony and shock. While the other staggers back, his nose broken but still conscious and sobbing in agony, one collapses and hits the ground, unconscious. Slowly approaching him, Samui grabs his collar and pulls him to his knees while taking his katana away with her other hand. He was about to scream for help when she slammed her knee into his face, knocking him unconscious. "Right, you going to keep it cool? Or not listen?" she asks him. After assessing her surroundings and determining her location, Samui seizes the men's limbs and begins dragging them to their designated home base in this section. XXX as people buy what little they can with what little they have, Kakashi sits in the market square and looks around. Sitting next to Kakashi, Sasuke displays signs of irritation as he listens and begs, receiving little to no information beyond the ratio of citizens to Gato's goons. However, Kakashi has been able to see beneath the surface. He observes that the populace hides from those who would hurt them. Those who were seeking trouble are visible to him. He sees people who want to fight but don't have the necessary numbers. He sees people from his village and allies moving about, behaving openly enough to avoid suspicion but quietly enough to keep prying eyes away. Gato's people are robbing others and stealing things that aren't theirs. Along with other people who are staring at the building, he and Sasuke notice a noise coming from a nearby building. The street becomes silent, as if they are waiting for something, and fear returns to their lives. Despite having boards covering most of the window, The building only has one entrance to the main street. On the second floor, there is another broken window with curtains that are kept closed and seem to be nailed in place. The dread emanates from the building, which had no distinct side in comparison to those that line the town's streets. A man falls through the first floor window as it shatters open with a loud crack that sounds almost like a tiny explosion. The man gets to his feet as blood splashes onto the floor. Kakashi notices that the man is dressed like a mist shinobi and that there is blood leaking from an injury on his neck. The man collapses, lifeless, after reaching up and touching his wound, feeling the blood gushing from between his fingers. 3 people rush through the freshly broken window, and kunai fly after them as the window comes to life. While the other 2 are able to jump out and start running in different directions, one of the individuals is repeatedly struck by kunai and shuriken and calls onto the remaining glass, which sliced right through him. Even Kakashi is surprised to see one of them carrying a weapon in this town, let alone this country. He was holding a single-shot, old prototype musket that was still smoking from firing. As the building becomes more vibrant than ever, the man dashes down the street, leaping and diving through storefronts. 2 mist ninja leap out of the window, pursuing the 2 fugitives as a third enters the building. As metal hits metal, metal rings quickly emerge from the second floor. They are cut by a blade, and the curtain falls. 2 men fall out and hit the floor, but they get back up fast. A man with a clearly worn-out blade of some kind tells the other to run. Based on the wounds and scars all over his body, it appears that the man has been in a number of fights, some more recent than others. Blood seeping from a wound to the side of the man's head, which now has a rope fall from being tied around it, revealed anger in his short, spiky black hair and black eyes. His thighs and torso are cushioned to help keep deadly projectiles from striking sensitive areas. A figure flashes as it spins quickly out of the window, and the man reacts quickly, sending sparks flying. A young man wearing oversized gray camouflage clothing, a white mask with slits and a flame design on the left side, and the mist symbol on the forehead is depicted when the figure lands. The 2 katana in the man's hands were undamaged and gleamed in the scant light that peeked through the mist and sky. Although the man appears uneasy, his rage is evident as he swings his blade at the mist ninja wearing an Enbu Black Op. The 2 trade blows, and the mist ninja easily deflects the attacks. Even though the man is skilled in combat, Kakashi can see that he is out of his league as the mist ninja plays with him. Kakashi turns to face Sasuke as he prepares to strike with a kunai. He is aware of the high risk and the likelihood that the odds are against them. He looks around, noting that people are fleeing the streets and that those who work for Gado are probably going in this direction. Although Sasuke resists, Kakashi grabs his shoulder and pulls him back as they return to an alleyway. The man's exposed limbs are covered in light cuts as the mist ninja keeps fighting him. The man becomes enraged and thinks quickly, attempting to come up with the best way to deal with the circumstance. He was aware that fighting a ninja is typically suicidal in nature. Before he dies, the best he can do is to maim him. Screams come from a distance as the ground trembles. Hearing the screams coming from that direction, the 2 men turn to face the left side of the street. Something crashes into a nearby building after flying through the air. The object strikes the ground, and blood splashes across the now partially demolished wall. It is unclear whether the young woman's face was frozen with fear before or after the collision, but she is lying there with her body almost converted to paste when she struck the building. As a monster emerges from behind the buildings in mist, the world appears to slow down. A gigantic creature that resembles a human, but has more metal on its arms, face, and torso than flesh. Those observing it wonder how it can move at all with that much weight as it drags its metallic hand across the ground. The ground around them trembles once more as its foot drops, denting the ground. Despite the absence of any metal plating in the first place, it approaches the 2 and soon displays the mist's emblem engraved on its forehead. The masked mist ninja calls out, almost like a dog, "Kaiju! About time, you slow bastard, go get him, come on boy, go get him." Wearing black goggles, Kaiju looks around the area and only notices the 2, seemingly ignoring the masked man. At the 2, it lifts its enormous fist and swings downward. Anticipating the attack, the masked ninja leaps away, and the man does the same, barely avoiding a direct collision as he lands in the building. The pressure causes the ground to crack, and the building starts to collapse along with it. The man had to roll away to avoid being crushed by the front of the building. A voice yells, "Kaiza!" The masked ninja turns to see Tsunami, who appears out of nowhere. As Kaiju started to tear into the partially collapsed building, the ninja laughed and turned to face it. His sights return to the woman, and he conceals his weapons in his oversized shirt with their holders. He points his left arm up at her and remarks, These people sure don't know when to stay quiet. He gives it a tiny twist, and a tiny blade shoots out of his sleeve and lands squarely on Tsunami. Blindingly, the blade flies at Tsunami. Hinata is soon standing there, exhaling in relief as the blade strikes the ground and a tiny figure falls to the ground. Despite having blown her cover, she aims to protect Tsunami by standing straight and adopting a nondescript stance. The preteen girl's sudden appearance and ability to deflect his attack somewhat impresses and surprises the ninja as he stands there. The man is struck hard against the back of his neck and hits the ground after something slams into the back of his knee. Standing behind the mist ninja, Kakashi looks down at him and looks around, detecting multiple chakra signatures approaching them with his left eye, which displays his Sharingan. Kakashi orders, "Hinata, we're in danger here. Take Tsunami home and wait for my arrival." He turns to face Sasuke, who is watching the giant smash into the house while attempting to reach the man. "Sasuke, head to the..." Kakashi started, but he heard a big object spinning through the air. Kakashi followed suit as Sasuke fell to the ground. Buildings and stalls are sliced through like paper by a huge, human-sized blade that flies narrowly over them. Kaiju barely escapes the blade before it collides with the adjacent store. When he sees the blade, Kakashi swallows and his mind races, recognizing it and hoping it's not the person he thought it was. As Kakashi looks around, he spots the person he was considering, with his executioner's blade in hand. Zabuza emerges from the destroyed store and watches as Kaiju and Kakashi, Sasuke storm into the house. "That's a little surprising, a brat and a beggar kid. Wait a minute, that I?" Zabuza Momochi, former 7 ninja swordsman of the mist. "This may be a little bit of a challenge," Kakashi says, standing up and cautiously glancing at Zabuza and the giant that is tearing off the building's roof. When Zabuza glances at the man, a tiny grin emerges from beneath the bandages that have covered most of his face. "Kakashi of the Sharingan, I almost didn't recognize you in that getup. If I didn't notice the single Sharingan, I might have mistaken you for a simple shinobi veteran." Looking down, Kakashi notices something moving beneath him. The young man he just put his hand on is crouching, and a tiny blade is being thrown directly at his eye. Another blur strikes the mist ninja, sending the two falling aside as Sasuke crouches in front of him, his right hand resting on the ground, kunai held out in front of him, prepared to strike or defend. Kakashi commands, "Sasuke, pull back now," in a solemn tone while maintaining awareness of his surroundings. Sasuke remains motionless, his arms reaching for both katanas as he concentrates on the elderly person standing up straight. "Zabuza, I thought this was a simple case of dealing with rebels, not high-ranking shinobi. Not that I'm complaining. The brat is the only thing I'll complain about." With his big weapon at the ready, Zabuza warns the young man, "Watch yourself, Takumi. One wrong move and you'll end up dead." Sasuke sighs in frustration as he watches Hinata maintain her position and says to Kakashi, "Kakashi, I'll keep this guy off your back." Kakashi gives Hinata a shaky nod and commands loudly, "Fine, just don't do anything that will endanger your life. Hinata, protect Tsunami with your life." Takumi nods in Hinata's direction before turning around and saying, "Right, I'll remove the brats from play." The mist shinobi sounds a little amused. As the mist grows thicker and gradually blocks out the line of sight, killing intent increases throughout the area. Slowly, Zabuza disappears into the fog, followed shortly after by Kaiju and his home, and then Hinata and Tsunami. Kakashi's only vision is of Takumi and Sasuke, who are both fixed on one another. Since Zabuza is an expert at the silent killing technique, the sound of the house collapsing almost eliminates any chance of hearing him in the first place. Kakashi looks around, observing the fog. The executioner's blade swings past Kakashi as he ducks in response to a whirling sound, feeling his bandages being pulled and ripped off by a strong source. The mist itself spreads and thickens the surrounding area as it swirls out of the swing. Kakashi hears the clanging of metal and swiftly launches a number of kunai into the mist. When Zabuza's shape appears, Kakashi recognizes it as a water clone because of the change in body. Immediately dropping the kunai, Kakashi performs a stunning series of hand gestures. Kakashi's body is sliced in 2 pieces as Zabuza's executioner's blade spins and passes right through him. He bursts into water after a kunai stabs him in the neck, causing water to splutter. It changes and quickly launches itself at Kakashi before the water hits the ground, colliding and bouncing back into the mist. Holding his weapon, Zabuza emerges, glancing cautiously and laughing as he leaps to the left. Sparks flew, and Zabuza noticed that the Kakashi he had attacked had turned to water. He was a little impressed by how fast he had switched to a water clone. XXX Sasuke lunges forward, slapping at Takumi with his kunai, which swings almost like a blur. The kunai collides with his body as he watches the mist ninja twist his body so that his back is facing the attack, but it only makes contact with his body for a centimeter before clanging against a solid object. Takumi's right arm moves, and Sasuke sees a flash. A katana rips a few hairs from Sasuke's scalp as he ducks and barely avoids it. With multiple paper bombs wrapped around the blade, Sasuke's eyes widen as the katana scrapes against the ground and starts to hiss. It explodes, sending Sasuke flying backward and slamming into the earth, with a few rock fragments embedded in him but not deep enough to seriously harm his body. Sasuke can hear the pieces of debris moving from the steps as the area is covered in dust. Even though his eyes are stinging from the dust, Sasuke's instinct takes over when he hears someone jump and notices a dark shape above. As he twists the kunai, Sasuke's legs kick up and his back arches forward. As a katana pushes against it and barely avoids piercing Sasuke's throat, a mass falls on the soles of his feet, and the whole of his kunai sparks to light. Fear gripped Sasuke as he neared death. He is positive that he would have died by now if he hadn't overtrained himself since he joined the academy in Genin. He keeps bearing the weight of the man in his blade, clenching his teeth as the kunai's sharp blade slices into the side of his hand. Takumi is standing over him, his arms trembling against Sasuke's feet as the dust settles. Takumi feels the force warping both of their weapons, and he clenches his fists tightly, focusing only on Sasuke. Reaching for his second katana, he lets go of his left. He smirks beneath his mask as his fingers move over the hilt. With his current strength, Sasuke cannot throw the mist ninja off him, so he curses when he sees where he's reaching. Takumi stumbles to the side and hits the ground as something swats at him, slamming into the side of his head. The young man's head is cracked, and blood drips from the side. The person who came to Sasuke's aid is a strong man named Kaiza who is standing there with a dented metal pole that has a faint blood stain on it. He looks at the bleeding man and the trembling ground as Kaiju searches the ruins for him and asks, "Are you alright?" He winces in agony as a big piece of glass protrudes from his left arm and blood appears there. "Yeah, who are you?" Sasuke asks, examining the man closely as he stands up and looks at him in confusion. As Kaiza introduces himself, he hears metal hitting and swiftly lowers himself to reveal a huge blade swinging through the mist. "I am Kaiza. I'm the one that started this rebellion and fighting against Gato. We best move, this is going to be a chaotic battle that neither you nor I can participate with." Feeling humiliated by almost dying at the hands of a renegade ninja, Sasuke watches sparks fly and simply glares at the world. He sees Takumi, who is still holding the kunai, and Sasuke looks in his direction. With his kunai tightly gripped, Sasuke murmurs, "I am Sasuke Uchiha. I am an avenger and I shall destroy my enemy." "Down!" exclaims Kaiza as she hits the ground, and Sasuke follows suit. They're all just barely missed by a huge, metal fist that sweeps across them. Sasuke leaps back up fast and hurls his kunai at the imposing shadow in the fog, striking it and making a clanging sound. Sasuke jumps and barely avoids the collision while making multiple hand signals as a second fist flies past. After inhaling deeply, Sasuke exclaims, "Fire style! Fireball jutsu!" and launches himself directly at Kaiju. After colliding, the fireball bursts into flames, engulfing the surrounding area. As smoke consumed Kaiju, the heat briefly causes the mist to split apart, revealing more of the surrounding area. The flames grew before they started to go out, gradually returning to their original position. Kaiza slowly stands up, gazing at the smoke that is still fuming and the dying flames. Sasuke straightens, listening intently and remaining cautious as he hears only the sound of the fire crackling and the fighting taking place in the mist. Sasuke gradually retreats as he feels angry and bloodthirsty. Something huge and red flies at Sasuke as the flames spread quickly, surprising him by hitting him and sending him flying. After slamming into a few storefronts, Sasuke crashes through a storefront's glass window and into the back wall, which almost collapses in the impact. Sasuke coughs violently, letting blood and a few broken teeth fall out. Sasuke's left arm and portions of his body that were too thin to keep heat from escaping blistered as his left side of his body swelled painfully from the collision. Standing unsteadily, he looks out and sees only mist. Sasuke waits for something, ready to dodge if hell broke loose, and every second that goes by is an agony. Sasuke uses his right hand to draw a kunai and launches an attack after glass breaks to his right. When he looks outside and sees only half a dozen terrified civilians, unsure of anything but a war zone, his hand stops. Sasuke notices a fire exit to the alley behind him when he turns to his left. He takes a few steps forward and looks deeply into the mist, gesturing for them to run for it immediately. Because they don't want to be involved in someone else's fight, the civilians accept his means of escape after seeing what he gestures to. Easily flammable items catch fire as a giant, red-hot metallic hand flies into the store and crashes through stalls. The hand continues looking for Sasuke after snatching a shelf stand and smashing it like paper. When the hand flew in, said shinobi jumped back, observing uneasily and wondering how such a creature could survive and cope with its extreme heat. He hears the civilians panic. One rushing into the street in desperation, another a couple running for the door. The hand pulls back, and Sasuke's eyes enlarge as a horrified scream ensues. Sasuke commands, "Go, now," and dashes to the fire escape, opening it to let the others pass through before he does. XXX Hinata stands in a nearby alleyway, her vision blurred by the contacts, but her Byakugan is as active as it can be. As Kaiza follows Sasuke's lead, she witnesses him running for cover. While Kakashi engages in mimicry with Zabuza, the young man known as Takumi remains alive. Based on Zabuza's chakra's reaction, she knew he was under a genjutsu. When Hinata hears the words, "Oh Kami, oh Kami, oh Kami," she knows that Tsunami is terrified by the confusion and that she saw her partner battling a monster before the fog obscured her vision. She could tell it was a ninja by the coils when she heard movement at the back of the alleyway. The figure approaches Hinata and Tsunami gradually, and when Hinata recognizes them as Leaf Ninja, she calms down. They pause directly behind her and gaze into the haze. "What happened?" he asks, glancing briefly at Hinata. Nervous as the giant murders a civilian, Hinata tells him, the Mist Ninja attacked a rebel base, an inhuman ninja attack. Kakashi F fighting Z Zabuza Momochi, unconscious enemy ninja in middle of street. Sasuke and an F few rebels H have escaped danger. There are also T3M Mist Shinobi keeping their D distance. Pull back, take the woman and get somewhere safe. I'll be here to assist Kakashi if things get out of hand. The Leaf Ninja looks slightly shocked at the mention of Zabuza, swallows a little, and reaches for Hinata. With a nod, Hinata grabs Tsunami's hand and assists her in standing up. Hinata worries as she notices that Tsunami is still in a panic and keeps saying, "Oh Kami," over and over. The shinobi are left to listen and sense what is happening as the two slowly move to the back. XXXXX sitting where he has been, Naruto can hear chaos in the distance, and he is doing everything in his power to avoid going there. He is aware that there are a number of strong allies who can handle the risks. Naruto moans and grips his head, wishing he could get a good night's sleep and feeling the effects of his lack of sleep. Sensing that Hinata is in danger, Naruto swallows and swears before getting to his feet. An emotionless voice asks Naruto to step aside and says, "Zabuza is engaged with someone. The person appears to have shinobi capabilities and we're to deal with the problem." The voice causes Naruto to freeze. Blood pours from Naruto's nose as his eyes violently roll back and shift. The thoughts of Naruto, "Do you have someone who is important to you?" As Naruto looks at the person in front of him, the words reverberate in his ears and in his head. The individual is warped, changing from a pretty adolescent tomgirl in a sleeveless pink kimono to a green haori-clad masked ninja. The two appear to blend together. When a person has someone important to protect, that's when they can truly become strong. With pain and blood coursing through him, Naruto's view is obscured by needles and ice. As he stands there staring at the tomgirl with Kakashi's arm through her chest, chaos and the nine tails fly through his body. When death arrives, a big man lies beside them with a faint smile on his face as death also takes him. Actual world someone nearby grunts in disgust as Naruto coughs violently, drops to his knees, and vomits. Shivering, Naruto feels nearly as horrible as he did when he first saw Tsunami. Blood seeps into Naruto's stomach contents as his stomach continues to churn. As his brain burns from the sudden vision, Naruto looks up and sees three people nearby, their figures currently only a blur. After stepping away from Naruto, one of the larger figures turns back to the smaller ones. "So the beehive we hit, it doesn't hold the bee we're looking for?" he asks, getting a shake from the middle-height figure's head. They look at the shortest one and say, "Negative, though from the chaos, we got something out of it." The shortest one tells them, "We shall continue to follow Zabuza's plan," when he gives the signal. The two nod, and Naruto's mind erupts once more. Naruto's eyes open up and he soon notices the three in greater detail. One of them is wearing a mask with a red, wavy pattern, and the other two are dressed in the old Mist Ninja uniform. Naruto whispers, "Haku," and the three instantly pay attention. With his untidy black hair under his headband, the tallest shinobi asks, "Did he just call you by your name?" With a radio on his back, light blue hair, and grayish-blue markings around his eyes, the second one asks, "Do you know him?" Haku looks at the younger boy and takes an inquisitive step forward before responding, "No, I do not." With a voice as emotionless as Naruto recalls wearing that mask, he asks, "Who are you?" Naruto swallows as he realizes he has just raised suspicions and tries to conceal his happiness at seeing the person, even though he isn't entirely sure why. His mind is racing for an excuse as he slowly falls to his knees, and he uses his fear as a cover. Naruto exclaims, "I'm a fortune teller," a bit too loudly. The man with the untidy black hair notes in confusion, "Okay, what number am I thinking of?" Naruto glares at him after giving him a perplexed look. Although he mentally punishes himself for making that excuse, it's the only thing he can do that might ultimately benefit him. I only get the power with certain people. For all I know, you could be thinking a number or a woman's breast. The blue-haired man laughs a little. The man with the black hair simply looks at him. Although it's difficult to tell because of the mask, Haku also looks at him, or at least Naruto believes he does. "Then tell me, what do you see?" With blood still streaming from his nose, Naruto gazes at him. Naruto swallows slightly as pain shoots through his brain. With a croaky voice, Naruto tells him, "You have someone important to you, Zabuza. He is your life purpose and you see yourself as his tool." He looks at Haku and notices his slight flinch. Naruto looks down after swallowing a little. "You die for him." The short businessman betrays Zabuza and he fights him, killing him and dying in the process. He died a hero to the townspeople. Haku turns to face the other two, who appear perplexed, uncertain, and shrugging. Haku looks at Naruto and doesn't move. "Can you see my past? What do you see?" With a tear streaming down his cheek, Naruto grabs his head and says, You lost your parents. Your father killed your mother." He swallows deeply, blood streaming down his nose and left ear. He was feeling more ill as the memories burned into his brain. Haku simply remains there for a moment before turning to face the other two, who are now giving him serious looks. Haku looks back at Naruto and notices the flickering of his hand in his blue eyes. Instinctively, Naruto lifts his right hand, experiencing pain as a needle passes through it. As Haku blocks the kick, Naruto swiftly sweeps his foot, causing it to strike his arm. In order to hit the blue-haired mist ninja who was about to attack Naruto, Naruto swings his left palm in an incomplete Rasengan to the side. Blood flows from the man's chest as the chakra slashes deeply into the surface and falls back from the force, which Naruto did out of pure instinct. Naruto rolls away, barely avoiding the second shinobi's blow, and panic breaks out in him. As the area gets colder and Haku makes a few hand gestures, Naruto strikes his ice mirror. After using a lot of chakra while his body was weak, Naruto manages to get back on his feet, but his body fails him. Naruto throws up once more, looks up, and then suddenly feels a pain in his neck. He hits the ground and stays still as his body goes limp and freezes. Haku kneels down in front of him, catching Naruto's attention as his eyes dart around in a panic. "Now then, Zabuza shall be interested in what you have to say about him." The feeling of the cold floor is soothing. Naruto experiences pain radiating up and down his limbs after it hits his neck. Because his limbs aren't working, Naruto coughs a lot and almost throws up as he stands up and falls onto his side. Naruto looks around him and notices chilly bars covered in rust that reveal almost nothing. With his limbs lifting and pressing against the ground, Naruto coughs once more and regains his balance. Naruto turns to look for the harsh voice that says, "Easy now, kid. Most people that get up too fast tend to faceplant, or at least from our predicament." Naruto strikes the ground once more as a result of the abrupt turn of his head. The same person who diverted his attention gives a little laugh and says, "I told you so." Naruto's eyes manage to scan the roof before settling on the edges of the prison bars inside. "What? Who? Where am I?" he asks. Given the aura of this place being close to a man who plans your death and does everything else to destroy your soul until then, the voice sounds somewhat bemused and happy as it says, "Well, depends on the view. To me, this is my home, to others, their place of death, and to you, your own view of things." Naruto slowly turns over on his side, revealing a small corridor that runs along both sides of his cell before continuing into the dark and eerie groans beyond the bars. Naruto soon notices the cell on the other side after his eyes gradually acclimate. A young man, possibly in his mid-20s, sits behind bars with black eyes that appear unusually comfortable despite their seriousness. His short, unkempt hair complements his rough, short beard. His body is wrapped in bandages, and the little flesh that was visible had both recent and old scars. He is dressed only in a pair of tattered black pants and what appear to be partially ruined sandals that are neatly arranged by the cell gate. Naruto appears a little perplexed, as if he's attempting to maximize his living space. As he looks at the cell and tries to straighten up, Naruto coughs a little. Sweat, vomit, blood, and a hint of fear are among the musk-like odors emanating from the floor. A hand suddenly leaps forward, snagging Naruto's arm firmly, causing him to scream in shock, terror, and agony as his fingernails pierce his flesh. Using his remaining strength, Naruto tears himself free from the hold and rolls across the floor, striking the bars that, as he soon discovers, are additional cells on either side of his cell. Inside the cell next to Naruto's, a beast of some sort is crouching. Despite having a human shape, it resembles a dog-like creature. As though Naruto were nothing more than food, its bright red eyes were fixed on him. It appears to laugh and straighten, and Naruto quickly realizes that despite its hunch, it is quite large, nearly 8 feet tall. He would be reminded of those old werewolf books by the way it looks. It chuckles, or what sounds like a chuckle, as it licks its claw-like fingers, tasting Naruto's blood and the little flesh he managed to obtain. Even more monstrous and beastly than when he hears the Kyuubi's voice, it utters, "Tasty. Hern enjoy taste, human." Naruto grips his left arm and feels the deep cuts in his flesh as he yells, "What the fuck are you?" Fortunately, his muscle was not torn, and he can already feel the wound healing. A quick arm quickly encircles Naruto's neck and tightens, applying pressure. As Naruto's fingers encircle his attacker's forearm, his feet kick. In an attempt to dislocate his fingers, Naruto's fingers swiftly reach for his hand. He discovers his right hand is nothing more than a stump as his fingers graze rough skin. Where his hand used to be, a rough scar. With a slightly croaky accent, the man gestures to the beast on the other side and says, Now, blonde chink. You woke me up from a pleasant sleep. I'm already tired of your chinks and ball liquor over there." A little laugh erupts, his stump still snug around his neck, as he says, "And ginger over there hasn't been helpful neither. So if you'd be so kindly shut the fuck up, or I'd beat your ass one-handed." As the case may be. Come on now, he's just woke up next to Black Tooth over there. Even you would question your life choices with that. The red-haired man laughs a little, and the man laughs back. The man laughs and mutters to himself, "Fair enough, Ginger." He then pushes Naruto away. With a terrified expression, Naruto turns to face his other assailant. Sitting by the bars, the man laughs in the darkness. His short brown hair and brown stubbles are graying with age, giving him an aged face. He looks as though he has been through hell for months and has returned for a vacation because he is dressed in a sleeveless leather jacket, a ragged shirt underneath, and old jeans and boots. The red-haired man laughs and looks at Naruto with a hint of pity, saying, "They sure put you between a rock and a hard place." Naruto coughs and rubs his neck, saying, "More like a wolf the size of a horse and a mental guy with a pair of scissors and his sights on your nuts." With his left hand, the elderly man gives the middle finger, and a "fuck you too, chink." Not knowing what chink means, Naruto glares at the older man, assuming it's an insult based on his demeanor. "Who are you, and what's your problem?" The man opens his mouth to respond. His name is Merle, the red-haired man informs him, pointing to the beast on the opposite side of Naruto's cage. He's a bit of a racist, but he's better company than Hern, but you can call him Black Tooth. He's the dog man over there. Ash, still dressed as a street urchin, smiles warmly at Naruto and says, "And as for me, I am Daichi Uzumaki. Though most call me Ash since I'm apparently all that remains of a burnt-out house. What's your name, little one?" Naruto tells him, looking surprised and raising an eyebrow, and Naruto. "Uzumaki." "Uzumaki. Certainly don't look like one. You don't have the hair. Unless father or Koichi fathered a child or bastard whilst I was away. I'm going for some Uzumaki survivor managing to escape the war and procreated with a blonde." As he slowly finds the wall closer than he thought and leans against it, Naruto slowly stands up while attempting to maintain his balance. Gazing at the elderly man, Naruto notices a smile that resembles his own, a cheeky grin that conceals the agony. Looking at his red hair, Naruto tells him, "My mother was an Uzumaki." Another sharp surge goes through his brain. In front of him is a woman who resembles Mother Sayla in her pure beauty and her endearing smile of love. His eyes blur from the tears streaming from them, and he smiles as her red hair cascades from her head like a stream of water. Naruto's nose and ear both leak blood, and the tears he sheds mix with the blood. After seeing Naruto have a sort of seizure, With his head slamming into the wooden wall behind him and blood streaming from his orifices, Ash asks, "You alright, kid?" Coughing, Naruto nods and says, "Yes," before slowly rising to his feet. The abrupt motion causes Naruto to empty his stomach and almost falls into it. He says, "Maybe not," as he cautiously crawls away from the vomit and leans against the bars, getting closer to Ash, who is watching him anxiously. As he relishes the coolness of the bars against his throbbing head, Naruto says, I get visions. Your hair reminded me of someone, mother." His voice becomes softer. Ash asks, a little perplexed, "Visions? Visions of what?" "If I had to guess," Merle says, staring at the kid, "maybe it's the Chink's impending doom in this shithole. Or maybe the Chink's high. You got dope on you, Chink." A throaty laugh that is surprisingly higher pitched than most people would expect is given by Blacktooth. "If he dies, I'll eat his body." Ash smiles slightly as though a burden has been removed from his mind and shakes his head, saying, "That's not a pleasant way to dispose of bodies, Blacktooth. And now I know what you look like, a hyena. It's been bothering me for the past week. You sure you're alright, kid?" Ash asks. Naruto nods and spits out of the cell, trying in vain to get rid of the vomit taste that was still in his mouth. Naruto, half honest and keeping the specifics to himself, tells him, "Yeah. It's not the first time it's happened," while painfully massaging his head. "And I get these visions. Just about a past life." With a contemplative expression, Ash says, Past life. I always wondered what my past life was." Minutes turn into hours, and down here, hours seem like days as time goes by quietly. Although Naruto's head is still pounding, he feels a little better and finds it easier to handle. A few lighter footsteps follow the heavy ones. A deep voice asks, "Are you the prophet that Haku mentioned?" A figure with a blade that could crush a man by simply leaning on it appears in front of Naruto as his mind races and his eyes roll back. As he charges through an army of blades, his chakra is dark, evil, and even demonic. Even though he is crying in front of a fallen shinobi, his heart isn't really evil, despite the fact that his presence shouts evil. The man appears in Naruto's visions, and he twitches, his head sliding up and feeling dazed. As best he can, Naruto smiles naively at Zabuza and says, "If this is going to happen every single time, I'm going to punch Hinata for breaking space and time. He has so much blood streaming down his face that it stains his lips and clothes." Naruto asks, laughing a little as his brain struggles to process the sudden burst of memories, "Hey Zabuza, killed Gato yet?" Zabuza looks at him with a mixture of confusion and annoyance. Although he was unable to defeat Kakashi, he survived the battle and caused some injuries to the renowned Jonin. He is currently covered in bandages. "So this is the brat that knew your past?" Zabuza asks, turning to face Haku as he enters Naruto's line of sight. 3 other shinobi who are all wearing the hidden mist headband and are dressed similarly to Zabuza follow. With his brain activity still not returning to normal, Naruto smiles a little. Haku looks at Naruto and nods, a little taken aback by his state. When they brought him in, he witnessed Naruto in pain, and now he's wondering if he's sick or more hurt than he's admitting. "Yes, Zabuza. This is indeed the one we brought in. He told me things that have happened and if he is in fact a fortune teller or prophet, as Kenta said, his information may be of importance." Zabuza turns to face Naruto again and finds that he is still grinning, which irritates him. Zabuza kicks Naruto in the face with his big foot, causing him to scream in pain and surprise. "Right, brat. You're going to tell me everything you know about me, and I won't kill you for wasting my time if it turns out to be accurate." "Is the young man a prophet?" Ash asks, trying to lighten the mood with a little laugh. "I'm sure it's just puberty and nightmares," with annoyance evident in his eyes after seeing Naruto get kicked. "You know how it is. Bleeding from strange places," he says, grinning awkwardly as Zabuza's thugs laugh a few times. Merle laughs as he watches the scene unfold. If this blonde chink is the prophet, then about 1 billion people are going to be pissed. Ignoring the other inmates and the beast in the adjacent cell, Zabuza opens the gate and asks, "Will you tell me what I want, or will I have to kick you again?" "I am Naruto Uzumaki. I've got some things to tell you. Believe it." Naruto groans a little, his face displaying pain as he tries to get back into a sitting position. The physical pain brought him back to the real world and it sucked worse than before. He holds his vomit back and twists his body until his back meets the wooden wall and his eyes meet Zabuza. Fear comes to Naruto, not knowing what's going to happen. XXXXX Hinata sits in a corner in one of the leaf hideouts, several miles away, feeling sad and concerned for Naruto's safety because he is missing from his position, and those eyewitnesses claim that members of Gado's cronies attacked a blonde boy and took him with them. She tries to calm herself by taking a shaky breath and letting a tear fall down her cheek. Kakashi has been lightly injured by Zabuza's blade, but not seriously, and is now sitting on the edge of a mattress while a medical ninja tends to his wounds. The Leaf forces have taken a small group of Gado's thugs, all of whom were hired swordsmen because lightning shinobi have been traveling in groups and would risk too much for any rewards they might offer. Suddenly, there is a commotion from the next room. "Don't worry, Hinata." Kakashi looks at her and smiles softly in an attempt to reassure her. "The inmates we've acquired will provide us with information. Eventually, one of them will shatter." Sasuke mutters obscenities, frustrated at having to withdraw from the fight, and calls Naruto a fool for being captured. Hinata nods, not really paying attention to her sensei. The group knows that half a dozen of their comrades, including Samui, are in the adjacent room when they suddenly start talking. "XXX. Come on bitch, we're Gado's men," the Leaf ninja say as they stand in front of a small group of inmates who are restrained and made to lean across the wall. Some of the inmates are frightened, while others are irritated, and the others are calm and unaware of the situation. Do you really want to hold his men as hostages in order to annoy him? The forces of the lightning and mist ninjas are on our side. They look at the goons and then at one of the shinobi, who nods confidently and says, "All right." The Leaf ninja ignore him and continue whispering to one another. As he walks and stands in front of the inmates, the self-assured shinobi nods, smiles, and draws a kunai. Two Leaf shinobi approach, seize the loudmouth goon, and push him against a wall-mounted chair. "Oh, so my threats have gotten through your heads now?" the good asks with a sly smile. The other two shinobi immediately stand back up and watch as the confident shinobi smiles and holds the kunai in front of the goon. The confident shinobi then gets serious and says, "You're to tell me everything about Gado, his plans, and any key details that will prove useful for us in the downfall to Gado." The man tells them, "And you're going to tell us where you keep your prisoners." He glares at the man while spinning the kunai in his hand. The self-assured goon gives the shinobi a smile in return and says, "Fuck you, you ain't going to do nothing." With a smile, the shinobi pulls the kunai back and throws it, saying, "Last warning." The man spits at him. He takes a few steps forward and whispers to the group, "Gado's goons heard of Kakashi's attack with Zabuza. There's a lot of Gado's enforcers entering the village." The door slams open, and everyone revolves around with their weapons drawn. The kunai thuds as they watch the intruder, and they all relax when they realize it's just another Leaf ninja. His eyes widen as he looks at the inmates. The others quickly follow his sight, and their eyes enlarge. The arrogant goon sits motionless, his head pinned to the wall, blood streaming down his face and the wall. The kunai had pierced the goon's head, right through the eye socket, with only the very end of the kunai visible from the socket. The other inmates are equally fixated on their deceased comrade. Their gaze quickly focuses on the man who threw the kunai, who simply stands there as stunned as they were, turning to face them with wide eyes because they know he was going to frighten him by throwing the kunai close to his head. The unexpected barge must have diverted him and killed the prisoner by accident. "All right, now that you know we're serious," says Samui, rolling her eyes as she steps forward and looks at the inmates. She waves a hand at their deceased companion and says, "You better give what you know and asked for, or..." "So, are you going to be cool, or are you going to try our patience?" she asks, getting frightened nods from the inmates. XXXXX Kakashi is seated at the table with a number of people, primarily representatives of the Leaf Squad leaders and other nation allies, Fumio, the lightning expert, who is leaning on a chair, and Kaiza, the rebel leader. They were able to get word from him after he learned that the Leaf Ninja were helping Tsunami, and Kakashi can see that the man is seeking revenge for the death of his son-in-law and everyone else who was harmed by the chaos of Gado's organization. Although the rebel group's numbers are unknown, they appear to be twice as many members as the Leaf and allies have brought. As he attempts to gauge the ninja, Kaiza looks at them gravely and asks, "Are you certain you can defeat Gado with these figures?" There are some buildings that Tsunami had designated as safe houses that they could use, but the details are hazy. The buildings are abandoned and unoccupied because the occupants have long since fled, disappeared, or died since Gado's rule came across the Wave Nation. Kaiza asks, looking anxious as he looks at the table and the simple maps of the entire village they're in. As Kaiza marks his bases on the maps, Kakashi acknowledges, "It'll be hard, but not impossible. We're to expect losses, but Gado doesn't know our numbers," he says, glancing at the maps. The element of surprise is still present, and most of Gado's forces are merely bandits and mercenaries. We are physically superior to them. Their greatest threat is the lightning and mist forces, as well as that Goliath they possess. For the benefit of the residents, we must hold this town. At least his men claim that if Gato learns that we are more numerous than a team or two, he will try to destroy the entire town to ensure that we are taken care of. Enemy numbers are higher than ours, perhaps 4 to 1. We need to root out all enemy units, both those on leave and Gato sends to purge those that interfered with Zabuza's plan and Kaisa's rebellion. We'll also need to make the means of invading this village too hard to risk an attack. Kaisa, do you have any ideas? You're the only one that's been fighting on the streets long enough to know every nook and cranny. Kaisa nods while glancing at the map and indicating a major thoroughfare that leads to the northern road, which leads out of town. He points to a small road that leads from the southeast and states, "This is the main route to Gato's town. Most patrols come from this direction. The only other patrols come from here. But they've only come that way 3 times, from the small port village, 5 miles down. But there's always a small ship patrol that circles the island. The boatmen that took you here have memorized the sequence they come by. There's always the risk of them coming in by the docks." One of the shinobi asks, "What about the forests? Any risk of them coming through there?" as he surveys the area, which is filled with forest areas. Kaisa nods with a slight smirk, "Yes, but only by ninja. We've set up several lethal traps around the forests. It's hard to set traps for ninjas since they're trained professionals. All we could do is hinder and limit their movement." Kakashi looks at specific streets and nods while examining the information. "We'll assign several teams to cover both roads. We'll need to add a majority of defense and long-range capable teams for the main road to help prevent any patrols from reinforcing the enemy patrols. We'll need 2 teams to guard the docks. They will consist mostly of ninja with a superior water affinity and powerful water jutsu. We'll have 3 teams to secure the other road that leaves the village. We'll also keep teams along the border of the village that leads into the woods, keeping spaced apart to keep any enemy sneaking in and taking us from behind. Kaisa, you're to have several of your most capable cause enough of a distraction for Gato's men. Draw their attention while our teams wipe them out with ambushes to these assigned areas. The rest shall assume to purge Gato's forces from the village, mostly focusing on the ambush points. Once complete, they're to await orders and go where they're needed." The other people nod in agreement with the strategy. As they proceed to advise the particular teams on tactics, Kakashi dismisses them. Kaisa remains there, her eyes fixed solemnly on Kakashi. "We still have Gato to deal with. He's got an entire army and enough money to buy another army. And didn't you mention that one of your people is missing and possibly captured?" Nods Kakashi, "I know, and we're going to retrieve him. Naruto. He's important to the Leaf and the Anbu teams will retrieve him. Naruto is hopefully still under his guise and isn't in immediate danger." Given that Naruto is still a child and only a few years older than Inari, Kaisa asks, "And if not?" Then they're in for a shock. Kakashi nods, a little uneasy, knowing that Naruto has been acting more aggressively due to his insomnia. He once used his bare hands to tear off the head of a raging boar during his outburst over the stone shinobi incident. However, Kakashi is ready for the event and would be aware if the 9 tails materializes. XXXXX The village has become eerily quiet as the hours go by. The store owner is not there, and 5 men are standing at a stall with only a few trinkets. One laughs and grabs what appears to be a toad with clothes, hurling it violently at a house nearby. Little glass is left in the window after the knock-knack hits it and breaks due to the force of the impact. The stall falls to the ground as he turns around and kicks it, saying, "This is boring. It's more fun when there's people panicking. No fun at all." His companion stabs the stall with his naginata and remarks, "Could be worse. At least we're not checking house to house for this supposed enemy ninja. That sounds like too much work." "True, Ino," said the man. Blood splatters across the wall behind the man as a loud crack suddenly appears. The skull has a tiny hole in it. The floor and wall are covered in blood and brain matter before the man passes out, his eyes unfocused and his body immobile. Quickly, eyes dart to an alleyway nearby. In the shadows, a man stands with tattered clothing, blood and mud stains, and old bandages wrapped around his arm and head. His ancient rifle emits smoke, and he swiftly disappears into the darkness. "Get that motherfucker!" yells one of the men, and the other 3 quickly follow. The man is followed by the 4 goons as they dash into the darkness. A tiny tanto is thrown at the man. It barely misses and strikes a metal dustbin close to him. Something flies through the darkness and there's a heavy spinning sound. When one of the goons sees what's coming, he dives right away, and the other grabs an unwary companion and falls as well. When the fourth doesn't anticipate it, the object flies past and there's a loud thunk. The warrior who was pulled down screams and clings to his left hand as blood spurts from the half hand that is still there after it got in the way of the blade. The man who pulled him down yells, "Calm the fuck down," and grabs his wrist in an attempt to stop the bleeding. In shock, the bleeding man trembles and rolls his eyes back. A thin line forms around the fourth man's neck, and he stands there staring in disbelief. His head slides off and blood drips from it. There's a loud thump, and blood splatters everywhere. "Fuck." The man yells again. The first man yells, "Where's that fucker?" as he searches for the shooter's whereabouts. The second man yells, "I don't ga," and then there's a thump. The first man turns to see his remaining companions cut in half by an unidentified assailant brandishing a pristine katana. The ninja's single swing causes his companion's blood and intestines to flow. "You fool!" He started to yell. A new ninja appears out of nowhere with a katana dangling close to his neck. The man's katana is pulled away before the blood can stain it after it slowly drips from his neck and soon sprays the floor. A voice shouts from the roof, "More are coming," and gets nods as the bodies appear to be devoured by the shadows. XXX soon. Screams, roars, or pain and rage reverberate throughout the town. Gado's mercenaries have been virtually wiped out by the allied shinobi. The lightning units and the few mist ninja in the village have been the most troublesome aspects of the purge. Gado's forces are still dispersed in small areas, and the mayhem is spreading. One building or cart is destroyed, and then someone dies. One after the other, and then another, and still another. A handful of Gado's people barely made it out of the village before fleeing into the woods, where screams and mayhem ensue. Only the dead and dying remained in the village as the fighting came to a halt. Few allied forces have been lost, and the outcomes have been more successful than expected. With the exception of the few who realized the danger and took every precaution to hide, none of Gado's men foresaw such an attack and were on the verge of annihilation. Minutes pass, seconds pass, and hours pass, and the allied force has decisively won the first attack. After learning of the victory, Kakashi promptly ordered that the town be secured from all sides and that barricades be put in place at all potential exits to make retaliation difficult. In order to find any remaining members of Gado's force, squads searched the buildings. While they lack 2 of the 3 supplies, the others are putting up barricades and preparing food, weapons, and medical equipment. XXX the mist thickens and the boards creak from slight movement inside the docks, revealing almost every position of anyone brave enough to be in a corrupt environment. Gado's people drowned a number of people as a form of amusement and punishment, so death is still present here. The blood of Gado's men's remains has discolored the waters, giving them a different hue than usual. A body floats with the flow. His eyes are wide, or rather, half of him is completely burned. The remnants of the lightning uniform, dark skin that almost resembles the burnt crisp of his flesh, and a faint hint of purple hair are all that are left. The body twitches before abruptly sinking and a tiny motion appears, as if a large object were moving beneath the water's surface, which turns red. After a few minutes, a severed hand rises to the surface and disappears into the fog. The only indication of movement in the nearly motionless water is a barrel that is bobbling up and down from the surface. From the haze a voice calls out, "Another barrel." A hand reaches down, attempting to grasp the barrel's edge to hold it in place as creaking boards appear. It sinks slightly when fingers touch the edge, then bobs back up out of his reach. The person stands up clumsily, revealing a peg leg close to the edge and a dark, rough foot. "Damn it," they say. He points to the barrel as it starts to disappear deeper into the mist and exclaims, "Oh, you shinobi types walk on water, right?" A leaf shinobi takes a step forward, letting out a sigh of exhaustion. His index finger pushes up his sunglasses as his left hand extends towards his face. "Are you sure it's necessary to have every barrel? There's always the risk of containing one of Gado's thugs. Or something good, like beer or something." With a sigh, Ebisu says, "Very well. This seems degrading for the man that teaches the honorable grandson." He then leaps down, hits the ground with his feet, and starts to move in the direction of the barrel. He pauses in front of the barrel, demonstrating that it hasn't been tapped yet by his hands gripping the wet wood that seals the barrel. There doesn't seem to be anyone in it. It is still sealed. Ebisu raises the barrel and inspects it one last time, finding no markings or punctures. After securing it around his arms, he starts walking back. The water turns black and bursts. At Ebisu, there was a solid mass that was even bigger than a shack fly. Ebisu loses his balance as the mass's shadow casts a shadow over him as the water trembles violently. He is surrounded by a mouth that is bigger than him and slams shut. After a startled scream, There is a sickening blood splash and the crushing of wood, bone, and flesh. As Ebisu's head, neck, and a third of his left arm and torso fall, its sharp teeth slicing through the metal and wood binding like paper. The creature explodes once more after collapsing back into the water. The force causes Ebisu's remains and the barrel's remnants to disappear, and the resulting huge wave strikes the docks. Horror and shock screams ensue. Much of the dock collapses, and the wooden walkway trembles violently. The man with the peg leg clings to the boarded-up windows of the nearby building as he barely escapes falling into the water. As his sole foot kicks and searches for traction on anything, his voice is loud enough to shatter glass. The few witnesses run from the scene, screaming in terror. With his fingers gripping on like life's jaws, the peg leg man screams non-stop. "Help! Somebody goddamn help me!" XXX white seeps from the cracks in the sky, resembling a hemorrhage. Even though they are paper-thin in comparison to the sky, the earth itself is now starting to crack. Additionally, white traces emerge from the fissures, leaking and blending with the ambient air. The white smell appears to transform into black smoke and disappear into the wind. As they perceive the dangers that humans are unable to perceive, nature appears to die, silent as a grave. In the woods, a figure watches the world appear to die from the cracks, but he can also see new life emerging from it that nothing or no one can see or feel. A wind that is not of this world causes his tattered blue cloak to wave. His hood conceals his face, only his glowing yellow eye goggles, which reveal no eyes behind them, are visible. He listens, hearing the carnage of this world and beyond the cracks, and lets out an echoed breath. As the man moves forward, another echoed breath is heard, and a ragged brown glove reaches out and touches the fracture. Before he bursts into a blue light and disappears from this world, this plane of existence, into an unknown existence, he lets out a sigh.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.